meeting of the Woodland Park Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
Chairman Hartsfield.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Harvey,
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Here.
Commissioner Larson,
Here.
and Commissioner Nielsen is absent.
Please join me for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, tonight we have a work session for the code review project. And I believe we're reviewing definitions, starting on page 30. Recreational vehicle park, I believe is the first item. Aaron, do you have anything to send?
Well, and let's get Jen up and running and joining us, that she'll like past session, she'll share her screen. So you have confidence in her accurately recording comments and such. And then I did get some comment from a member of the community that sometimes it's hard for them to understand exactly what we're talking about. So they have asked if possible that we could show the definitions also. So Jen's going to try and split her screen a little bit. So that's a little more clear, hopefully, for anybody who is trying to follow along out there. This has not been, the documents have not been widely available to the community at this point because they are just work products. That's a subsequent phase when we get together a solid draft and we're ready to start engaging the community. So right now it's your review and comment as we build what we want to take to the community. So with that.
Okay. Recreational vehicle park. Do you have any comments? This is what I'm looking up on the screen. Any comments or corrections? Recreational vehicles.
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yes, please.
It does say it's inspection, sale, storage, or repair is part of that definition. Is it real?
This is the definition as it
It's
currently
correct,
exists in our code. There's no, other than a capitalization change, there was-
Right, I know, I understand that, but it's that my understanding was that they weren't supposed to be just like repaired. It wasn't a repair lot. It's a question. I don't know why you need that in there. Good point.
I mean, it does specifically say or in the middle and goes to the unoccupied trailers. So it's referring to both, where it's a campground where they're occupied and says or any lot or parcel of land which unoccupied recreational vehicles, camping trailers, et cetera, are stored or parked. So it's covering both. I don't know if you wanted a separate definition or to limit the use, but that's what this is defining it as.
Well, so does it, okay, I'm gonna be anal here. Does that mean since it says any lot or parcel, if somebody parked it in their yard, that technically would fall under this? It's a question.
No, that's a more complex question. Hang on. And we would go back, from a staff perspective, we would go back to how is the property zoned? What is the current use on the property? And then how some of those other ordinances come into play. So from that use table, I'm not sure what zone districts a recreational vehicle park is a permitted use or not. Or if it requires a conditional use permit. So I would have to look that up. So the use is the recreational vehicle park.
Right.
And so it's listing some of those ancillary things that you can see happen in association with a recreational vehicle park. I agree with you that it's kind of odd when it says or repair.
Yeah.
But does that mean the guy who's recocking the roof, or which is very different from rebuilding an engine? Yeah. So I don't know how else to answer that other than, like I said, we would be looking at it through that lens of the zone district and the use table.
Well, I think Val makes a good point, though. If you look at most recreational vehicle parks in the Springs, there might be an adjacent property where you would have maintenance or repair done on the vehicle. But you wouldn't have it in the park itself. And do we need to make that distinction? I'm trying to find that in the use table. I would think we would not want to have maintenance, commercial or maintenance facility co-located with the recreational vehicle park.
Yeah, it's like it's not saying that you personally are fixing a window on it,
Is it,
because it's not restricted to, I don't know.
this definition would allow guy to have his RV repair shop within the park.
I found it in,
You found it?
yeah, it's in chapter 4, page 6. Recreational vehicle park is conditional and CC and SC and permitted conditionally and PUD.
Permitted conditionally where? PUD. Oh, okay.
I think there's two definitions here. One's for a recreational vehicle park. And the other one's for recreational vehicle sales and repair.
Repairs, yeah,
You could almost put it, the second half of that, under the recreational vehicle storage, you could do storage and repair. At the next definition.
Yeah, I
true.
think those are all three different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
And do you want them
Do you
all
want them all?
together? And this definition allows that. Or infers that that is possible.
It could just be a sales line.
Mhm.
It's interesting also that it references unoccupied RVs and storage. And then right below is recreational vehicle storage as a definition.
Yeah.
So there's some confusion, I think, there, but might be some clarification if we check those ordinances also.
yeah.
But it is somewhat odd.
It does in the second part use a plural each time it comes up. It's two at the first half. The second one has plurals, which may be useful so that a single storage of an RV in your driveway, a single RV doesn't make it an RV park. That's probably not the intent.
Right,
If you have two or more parked in your driveway, the zoning isn't, the intent is to prevent 2, 3, 4 parked in a residential neighborhood, but one would be okay.
This is Jen. Do you guys think the recreational vehicle park is meant for? This is reading right now more like storage of recreational vehicles. Is it meant to be, where you park and you're staying there in your recreational vehicle?
First
that's what it says, it
as
says a campground.
It starts off with campground, then it switches over to
Well,
unoccupied.
as a campground, yes, okay,
For
yeah.
sale, for storage, for repair. It's
Yep.
any RV parking is kind of what it's referring to. So it seems a little bit too inclusive.
Yeah,
And
I
know
agree.
There is a code that prohibits parking campers and RVs in residential neighborhoods on the street for more than 96 hours. You can park them in some zoning unless it's the covenant prohibits it for if it has a concrete pad to park it on. So I'm assuming this is all about like Bristlecone or the other RV parks in town.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, do we want to draw out repair and draw out storage? Those are two entirely different uses, three entirely different uses.
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
I think we should separate the unoccupied from RV park where people stay in the RV. It's, the unoccupied encompasses inspection, sale, storage, and repair. That should be a separate category. If there's some specific commercial venture that's just parking RVs for those functions, it should be, some other description or definition than what most people commonly refer to as a park.
And I'm going to suggest that sales and repair often go hand in hand, like a car dealership. Storage is, I would consider the third category. So there's the actual RV park, which a lot of times I've seen an association with RV park and campground. You know, those tend to go hand in hand. Thinking in terms of the more traditional approach to an RV park, which was the traveler who was there a night or 7 nights and kind of moved on. So more akin to that. But storage, I think is a separate beast.
And we do have a separate definition for storage coming up.
Well, can you split, since you're talking about 3 things, you got the whole first gigantic sentence and then it starts with the or any lot. I mean, can you take that or the any lot thing and make it a separate item? So it's, because that's where it addresses inspection, sales, storage, or repair.
Yeah, no, this probably needs to be looked at in more depth because to your point about can you stay in an RV on your property? There's a whole other separate ordinance. I forget which title it's under, which addresses camping in unauthorized areas. So that's a whole other thing.
And we don't want to mix those up.
No, we don't.
Be careful when looking at the next definition, which says recreational vehicle. Simply added the word storage,
Yeah,
but the definition is simply says its definition is a definition of RV.
Right.
And the word storage was stuck in. So storage is a vehicle.
Yep.
That doesn't work at all.
That wasn't added one on it.
yeah, that's true. I mean, the storage should just be not even in there. As in that definition.
In
as it
that
stands.
definition, I'm getting ahead, but storage
Yeah.
should come out in both red places where it's
Yeah,
added.
she closed the comment, now I can see it.
And if we need an RV storage one, it needs
It
to be
needs to
yet
be
a
added.
new definition.
So,
I would suggest that definition that you just referred to, Lee, is definitely a definition for an RV. So let's keep that as a definition for the vehicle itself. And then add 3 definitions to clarify, 1 for the park, 1 for storage, and the last one for sales or repair.
Yeah, and I also just saw something else that's wrong with this, and Catherine, you probably caught it too, the 180-day
Yep.
limitation. We don't have that any longer. You can live in your RV as long as you want.
And that's
in
certainly
an
a standard.
authorized location.
Yeah, by location, correct.
Yeah.
So there's 2, what seem to be very benign definitions that I think need to be relooked.
Yeah.
So consensus recreational vehicle storage should be reverted back to the original recreational vehicle definition.
Mhm.
Yes,
Recreational vehicle park will be broken into 3 separate. One for campground, 1 for sales and repair, and 1 for storage.
And the 180 days has to be consistent
Strike
with the
that.
current reg.
and it needs to come in as a standard if it still applies, but you said that's gone now?
Well, we never took it out of the definition of RV, but we took it out of the campground definition.
And
I mean, yeah, for consistency, you can take it out, but we never removed it from the actual definition. So that's up to you guys.
And I'll pull that ordinance for Jen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Larry may be right, maybe that's a standard and we've already decided we don't want standards in the definitions.
Right.
Stay on 180 days.
Yep.
Wow, this is.
recycling facility, got a couple comments up there. Valerie, you had some notes?
I did. Sorry. Oh, yeah, that was just stupid. I mean, no. It says recycling facility means it means a recycling collection center. My point was just get rid of A in recycling because recycling's already in there. It-
Means a collection center. instead of A recycling.
Right.
Recycling out of that. Larry, you had a comment?
On recycling,
Yes.
I do not.
I'm not reading very well. I should put my glasses. It was Carol, I'm sorry, it was you.
I don't.
People always get Carol and I mixed up.
It's easy to do.
You said you should exclude.
Oh, yeah, a few years ago, there was a discussion, and you probably remember this, Ken, of wet trash versus dry trash. And the collection site that's within the city limits down on 24 going out of town on the left, you know which one I'm
Mhm.
talking about?
Yes.
There was concern that they did wet trash there, which means the smelly stinky wet stuff. Do we need to make sure that that is, continues to be excluded in this definition for recycling?
Well, intentionally, a compost facility would be not included in a recycling facility.
If that in fact is what wet trash means,
Well,
I thought it did. Maybe there were people that were really concerned about the trucks keeping wet trash in their the back end of a collection truck before they went down to the springs. And I remember at the time, the consensus was that they would not have wet trash for that very reason. So is that still a concern for the community? For any collection site, any recycling site? Is wet trash versus non-wet trash?
I could support that intent. I'm not sure wet trash is the proper term or not.
I think you might want to just say a solid collection center that includes receptacles, trailer structures, whatever for solid waste. Meaning aluminum, steel, copper, plastic, glass, paper, bottles, cans, clothing, etc. But solid waste is usually the term that you use for all
Wet
other
trash.
stuff. Well, the stuff that's not wet.
Yeah,
Well, and there's a difference between actual waste versus compost versus recyclable materials.
mhm.
So,
I think RCRA includes solid waste. and
Well,
It doesn't
okay.
exclude wet.
No, I was just gonna say, we specify what it includes, not all solid waste. It's just these items that are solid. It kind of eliminates any paint, oil, fuel, those kind of things that somebody might take somewhere else.
The list they have is all solid stuff.
Right.
And it would appear, it would be hard to find a whole lot of hazardous materials that could fit in there, because they're not gonna be on that list.
Yeah, 'cause it
Anyway, I'm
says-
sure this is defined elsewhere in other codes. We just are adding it here because we didn't have it before, I guess, right?
It sounds like another
Yeah, it's
case of separate from the definition of what a recycling center is. If it's not already covered, you might wish that there was a provision somewhere that said, don't have wet stinky stuff dripping out of the back of your trucks when you drive down. the road."
That's the concern.
We could add a final clause not to include wet trash,
Or whatever the
the proper terminology.
proper term is
Well,
for this decade.
Or at least put it as a note too, that can come out later, but if Logan Simpson would insert it.
I think it's important to remember, we're talking about recycling facility.
Mhm.
So we're not talking about trash, we're not, we're talking about recycling here.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Not a dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Most recycling facilities get a mixture of stuff, just not understanding what it's supposed to say.
I don't see corrugated cardboard in here either.
yeah. And the other piece of this is to, for us to check how this is set up under our use table. Because this may be one of those where it is wise to have this as a conditional use, where you can, factor in some of those other things that do get recycled. Or how those processes happened, where I was living, out in the Pacific Northwest. They actually had an amazing recycling center there, and the objective was to keep it out of the regular waste stream. So you could drop off, cans of paint and other things that were not full on hazardous waste, but things that you definitely didn't want in the waste
Recycle.
stream.
Mhm.
And then a couple times a year, they did do a hazardous household waste collection on a designated day. So they were handling that, but for very finite periods of time. You know, it wasn't a regular thing at that location.
I'm not seeing it in the new proposed use,
Recycling is a conditional use in every,
every zone.
including residentials.
It sure is.
Where'd you find
That's
it?
what it says on
Okay.
page 8, chapter 4. On the waste. The infrastructure near the end of that waste related recycling facility conditional in every single column.
And then I notice on the next page, we intentionally prohibit garbage transfer station, which we do have here in town.
Yes, we do.
No, it's in city limits. Yeah.
And the garbage transfer station definition refers to solid wastes. Only.
You know, we do have that major section under infrastructure called waste related. That's where we
Yeah.
found recycling. And the things we have just been talking about, maybe that's where these things need to go.
I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't want a recycling facility in my residential neighborhood conditional or not. I don't even think it should be a. Sorry, we're not supposed to be talking about uses to now, but.
Well.
No, it totally goes hand in hand, Val,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's-
And, yeah,
It's table T.
I agree.
Say page 8, right?
Waste related.
Potentially, should be more of the, I forget what we call it, but basically our light industrial zone is really where this is. mostly
Wait,
located.
oh, there it is, right there.
Page 9,
And then on 9, it
transfer
says,
junkyard,
Yep.
mineral extraction, solid waste facility.
Solid waste
and
facilities.
recreational vehicle storage.
But it's not there for anywhere, anything, so that's a
Right,
little
it's a
different.
blank chart, so it's not allowed anywhere.
We'll probably find a lot of those are added definitions that being put in now.
She's making notes.
Recycling facility, we are gonna want in some scattered, there's a grocery store that had a place for recycling cans in it. You want to allow that, so in some commercial areas, that's sensible use.
Mhm,
Yeah,
It is.
Commercial makes sense, but the residential ones that.
When we get there, we probably just take all
I'm
the
gonna
additional
scribble on my.
residential out.
Yep, I agree, Lee. But when we get there.
We'll finish with recycling facilities or any other comments or questions we need to proceed. Let's go to religious land use.
My comment was, it says land, but they're talking about buildings. Is that anal?
No,
That actually, that phrase religious land use, I believe comes out of the federal statute related to, I believe it's called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, or LUPA.
Oh.
So that's a reasonable term, quite honestly, as much as, well, it was made up by the feds, so,
That's a whole nother issue.
If we hadn't addressed that already.
that's an explanation, you know, and so I'm actually, because of that overarching federal legislation that in a lot of ways preempts us at a state and even, and definitely at a local level, I'm comfortable with that term. As much as, yes, it does ultimately address buildings. But,
A land use. Okay,
yeah,
You want to add means land used for churches, synagogues, and such?
Actually, that,
that's buildings.
yeah, the word for that,
yeah. Yeah, land, yeah, that makes sense, Jen.
Okay,
You know, historically, the term places of worship used to be, well, maybe it's old school or maybe it still applies. Talks about where people actually go to congregate to worship. And I think including all religious land use under that definition, and I certainly understand, Karen, what you said about the federal thing, but I think we have to be very careful with that. And what I'm reading here with this definition, tells me this is a place of worship. And my comment didn't get all the way through, or I didn't transpose it correctly. But I basically said change religious land use to places of worship.
And actually, what Karen was talking about earlier with the RELUPA, where across the nation, people are changing it from places of worship to religious land use. Just so you're aware of kind of what's happening with that terminology.
Mhm, we know all about RELUPA. That's what we got threatened with.
And I would certainly recommend losing the last part of that sentence that says including residential structures or religious personnel and accessory buildings. That can be taken care of through. Is it a school? Whatever, but I don't think it's appropriate for that.
Oh, is it
Like the-
referring to a parsonage?
Not a parsonage, but or a monastery.
If this is part of the federal definition and part of this other stuff,
All
if
goes
we
back-
change it, it's not gonna do any good.
Probably goes back to the land use table. So if you're allowed to have a church, you could have a residence for a minister or similar person. What I think it's allowing.
It's
Well, then I think we
Fairly
need the word
conventional.
accessory somewhere in there.
what is not clear about, and I think we're probably gonna wanna engage Nina's expertise is that trend towards mega churches, which, are many things beyond just the church and how they all fall under that RLUPA designation. So we may need to expand or look at this through that lens also, just to make sure we got things covered correctly. I don't have the answer. I just know enough to say this needs to be looked at again in more depth.
And the use table has it as conditional in all zones because it's meant to address the fact when it's the issue is religious, the issue is the fact that it's a building which can't be supported from the infrastructure such too. There is a role for conditional use. I'm not suggesting we change any of the definitions, just leave it where it is. The conditional use for these allows one to address a situation where just the building doesn't work because of technical reasons, such not because of religious reasons.
Where you have the ability to mitigate impacts through that CUP process.
And exactly, the conditional use could mitigate, and then it's fine.
Move on to residential care home, group living.
Yeah, I had a thing here and there's assisted living and there's skilled nursing facilities, but a residence care home is not it's not a thing. It's the residence care homes to me would be like you're defining assisted living, but they don't do medical treatment in those. They do those in skilled nursing facilities. So if you're in a group living, like if you were at the Aspens, there's a primary care physician that comes in and does all that stuff. But they're just fed and all that. The people or residents are fed and all that. They're not living alone. So I think we're mixing some things here.
I agree.
But is there a difference from a planning perspective?
Yeah, well, it depends how you want to look at it. I mean, if a residence care home as an entity doesn't even exist. That's my hang up. It's not because it's what you've written here. They've given a definition for this resident care home and they say residence care homes provide for needed medical care or services at a lower level, and group assisted living does not do that. It's the primary care physician that comes in and does all of that. I'm a little anal about that one too, because my daughter is a nurse practitioner, primary care, so and she goes to facilities. It's just, so you could have if somebody had a group home, and there were 5 people in it, they could be 5 people living in a group environment and they don't really need any medical services. That could be one type of facility, I guess, but it's not the terminology that's generally
So
used.
Val, what you're saying is it probably is more correct to take out that last sentence, residence care homes provide for needed medical care.
Right,
We still need to identify a group home or a residence.
yeah,
I think this is grouping those type facilities into one name. while it's not common in the medical industry,
Well, but it's not legally, it's not, you can't, there's things you cannot do in a group home that you can do in a skilled.
and we're
nursing
not
facility.
licensing that, we're permitting the structure to be bought, put on the property. We got pretty much the same residents, different acuity as far as care is needed. But traffic and everything else wise, I don't think we need to differentiate it from a planning perspective. From a licensing standpoint, yes, we'll leave that up to the
This says-
stage.
Yeah, if you read on after, sorry. If you read on after the medical, provide for needed medical care services at a lower level than that typically provided in medical treatment facilities, clinics, or institutional homes. This to me is more of a group home for special needs folks or senior citizens who can't
That's
function
and that's
as
assisted
well,
living.
need help getting in and out of things and such. Not that they require medical care.
Right,
So in the last sentence, I proposed resident care homes may provide for needed medical care. That way it would cover both sides of that acuity.
And I don't have a problem with that, but we do have a definition for care facility as well. So how do you distinguish between the two? Both seem to be defined as operating to provide residential care rehabilitation services for the elderly. Care facility definition also talks about nursing homes, convalescent homes, rest homes, and homes for the aged.
we crossed that one out,
Did we?
uh-huh, at least mine, I have it scribbled. So I think they took it out.
So if we did in fact take that out, then making this other one more inclusive would work.
Well, and do you want to go back and check state statute? Because there is very particular language in Colorado law around group homes. And that may be what this is trying to get to. So that I think is a double check that we need to do.
I'm comfortable with the chair's comment, particularly when he added the word may.
From Nina.
That it allows it as among the possible functions. They're all in the use table. Residence care home are all conditional in all the residential zones.
Yeah.
Why don't you put the word may in there and just verify that we're not going against any weird state things that we don't know about?
I would suggest that we do, that last sentence would read residential care homes may provide for needed medical care or services, period. And then strike the rest of that.
Oh, that's a good
Sentence.
idea.
I think the reason for having that in is so it doesn't bump into hospitals. Or something that does provide nursing home, something else.
I do recall a discussion now about someone who was going to purchase a home in a urban zone behind them. Swiss Chalet and provide in-house care for very wealthy women with substance problems. And our definition of residential care required that the owner be on site. And ultimately that owner did not show up for work and it closed down for several other reasons. But I remember that discussion before. So are we trying to capture that in this definition? It doesn't talk to the requirement for on-site
Mhm.
occupancy of an owner.
Well, these are licensed by the state, so it would be the state
State
requirements, whatever they.
determination.
Hers was supposed to be licensed by the state, it never made it there.
I think the staffing would be on planning decision and more on.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't have two, if in fact Val's right, I don't recall, the letter C was so long ago. If we did strike care facility, and then this particular definition would have to be all encompassing.
Huh?
Looking at my notes and I see the use and I have a line through care facilities.
That may be one of those state statute things that we cannot prohibit.
That's true for group homes.
Yeah.
And that's where, this is one that we definitely need to look back at more holistically through all the points that you guys are bringing up here tonight, which is very helpful. Yeah, because there are things that are somewhat similar to one another, but there are very important distinctions that happen between those. So making sure we understand where those clear lines are for, what is a state defined group home versus, the spectrum of care for folks that need assistance. It's not always the elderly. So that can be anywhere from independent living to assisted living to full on, nursing or memory care. That's a whole other spectrum of services. And a lot of times that's the same facility that provides that spectrum, in the same location. But anyhow, to make sure we take a look at these collectively that way. And also some of the other medical clinics and hospitals, where are the lines between these different things and what happens where. So I know in my own neighborhood, there was a sign up recently. It's a hospice facility that was asking to change the scope of what they allow to actually permit inpatient care for X number of beds. And, I just thought it was interesting. And given
There's
where, it's-
several places with hospice that
yeah,
have hospice care in their group, but an in-house facility too, not up here, but there is.
yeah. So anyhow, that's another subset of that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's in the review category.
Yes. We come to restaurants with drive-in food service.
Ken, I would suggest that we look at both those definitions for restaurants at the same time. Because there's some overlap and some concerns.
Okay.
I think it's a useful change to go from pre-prepared or rapidly prepared compared to traditional / family restaurant.
Yes.
Drive-in or non-drive-in seems like a more useful way to categorize restaurants.
The other way I've seen that split before is it's a restaurant, some with or others without a drive-through option.
I was gonna say, is drive-in a term used with restaurants?
Drive-in,
Sonic is the only one I can think of. Everything else is a drive-through.
I would suggest
Curious.
writing drive in and
Drive-in
Food.
/ drive-through
call it
/
fast,
service to your car. I
fast
mean,
food service.
pretty much every restaurant now has a pull up and stop at a,
window.
ordered online, pick it up here. Stop. I mean, every restaurant in Colorado Springs has got that.
Okay, and so
Hold
from a planning perspective, that's a little bit different than the actual drive-through window. Because the window, you were dealing then with car circulation and traffic and stacking, which is different than designating a couple of parking spaces by the door
Right.
for pickup of.
I know, I'm just saying that the drive-in is a little confusing.
Ken, I would suggest get rid of drive in at this point and call it fast.
I like
Fast
that
food
idea too,
service.
the way it was, but
No, then you get into
That's all.
weirdness about fast casual, slow casual, but so from my perspective, it's with or without the
Right.
drive-through window.
Okay,
I don't mind changing
that's the
drive-in to
distinction I think
drive-through.
is-
If drive-through is better understood, that's fine. I don't.
I think so too.
Drive-through. What is the purpose of the last sentence there that was added as red? Because it's like it seems like it's repeating what was already said. I don't get the purpose.
I agree.
I can't explain it. Jen might not be able to explain it because she had a different staff person who did a lot of work on this initially. So that's part of where you're hearing crickets from Jen and I is we're coming in the middle, which isn't overly helpful, but we're committed to keeping it moving.
Well, but it tells you if it's clear or not.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just saying, it tells you if the definition is understandable and clear. With you guys coming in the middle.
Great point, Lou. Yeah.
I think that last phrase in red could be eliminated because we're defining a
Yeah.
drive-through restaurant as having a drive-through window.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's a very distinct definition of restaurant with a drive-through service.
Yeah, I think we had changed, we already said.
We're gonna go through
make it
drive-through would be appropriate, more appropriate term.
Okay.
And with the restaurant with the drive-through window, I would, I think I would include the likes of Sonic. You know, or the old A&W root beer was one that used to do that.
Sonic actually has a drive-through window now,
Yeah.
almost every one of their buildings, so it's not.
In
such a big
addition
deal.
to the pull-in
Yes,
spaces. So I would include
the one in
those
Winter Park does.
in this type of definition.
Maybe that last sentence is appropriate with drive-in service when the title is drive-through.
Why?
It's addressing Karen's concern that a drive-through service window where you pull the car up to window, get your food versus a drive-in similar to Sonic.
In-car dining,
In-car dining.
You can change the whole wording, but I think it's clear as it is now. If you accept either the word drive-in or drive-through, one says does not have drive-through, the other one says it can have drive-through.
I'm getting punchy, but I think we should have one that says one drive-through, drive-in with a view and drive-in and drive-through without a view.
Hey,
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'll mute my mic.
I mean, the point for us though is traffic. You know,
yeah, it has to do with how we look at the site and what's going on the site and the impacts. And when you talk to these different restaurant chains, it's slightly terrifying when you drive in or you dive into their operations. Because whether it's Applebee's or Chili's, they all have metrics for timing of when you sit down to when the food shows up, because it's about flipping the table. But it still takes longer than truly fast food, you know, McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell kind of establishments. But that the Applebee's and Chili's probably are more similar because they typically don't have the drive-through line. They're more similar to your traditional slow food, you know, truly white tablecloth dining experience.
That's a good segue to that definition that's called restaurants without drive-in food service. I call it restaurant traditional sit down.
And that's where I'm looking at. It's a restaurant. Does it have a drive-through window or does it not?
Exactly.
That's the distinction I'm looking for.
Yep.
and the same thing on the last line on that one on the without is repetitive.
I thought it made it just clearer and it didn't seem to be a standard. That's the whole point. Is it have one, the drive-in or not have?
Well,
one?
but it already says that.
Does it say that?
And in the title, yeah.
It's in the title.
Well, no, but the title isn't a definitional.
Right, the title could just as easily say Charlie.
Okay. But it would say Charlie, it may not include Charlie food service. It's.
Well, no, I guess what I'm
No,
trying to say is,
I'm just saying it's the same thing.
I agree with
Faster
Lee.
food
Let's
piece
leave
of
it
art.
in for clarification in both the fast food with and without food service or drive-in service.
Drive-in, drive-through.
Retail marijuana store, any comments?
I had a comment that should be removed, but we've talked about that before and it's part of the long debated recreational marijuana provisions in the code, so don't delete it.
Yeah, and Jen and I met earlier today in preparation and I don't remember if we called out marijuana specifically, but some of the adult-oriented business definitions. Those were developed through a lot of time and energy. So those are pretty tightly defined
Don't mess
for
with it.
for very strong legal reasons. So our guidance at a staff level is don't touch them.
Yep, I agree.
So we'll probably run into a few more of those as we get to the S's. So,
Medical marijuana is sort of like signs. Don't go there.
yeah. Yeah, and which is good news that you guys have spent a lot of time and energy investing in certain aspects of the code that you're comfortable with. So you know that we're good with these. Let's keep what we're comfortable with. So.
Okay, retail store. Couple comments, Larry?
Yeah, we have
No.
standards included with the definition and they need to be removed to the
The outside
standard
storage.
section.
Well, Okay, but you have a definition for a large retailer that's the more than 75,000 square feet and retail sales is less than. So I mean, you made a differentiation between the two things.
I
And
thought,
we have that whole outside storage thing. That's the same stuff we went through
you
before.
know, I thought, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were gonna look at definitions for retail based on square footage and come up with definitions based on that.
Yep, that is what we talked about before. You're correct.
So this is probably not even relevant at this point.
Well, it is if the large retailer thing is staying in, except for if Jen's gonna do both of them, then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but the storage part should go, because we got rid of it everywhere else.
Get rid of it.
And again, those refer to standards.
Well, yeah, the outside storage thing is like. Because everywhere else we had it earlier, we took it out.
Hmm.
Good to move on to roof signs.
Is that going to sign comma roof with all the other signs?
Yes, yep, yeah, we talked about that too.
Roof mounted wireless facility. You know what a rooster is?
You could shorten.
Does it
by
say rooster
putting
on
that
the
back in the
on the use table?
back in the definition of domestic fowl and reduce the number of bird definitions we have.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we're putting roosters in domestic,
If you combine it with the domestic fowl section we've got, we've actually saved some ink.
But what about peafowl?
Let's see what
Well,
the- Yeah, domestic.
Peacocks make way more noises than.
oh yeah, they're nasty.
Yeah,
So,
but that,
You're calling out a rooster for making noise. You need to think about the other birds that make just as much noise as males, and I do know that we do have something in our use code that talks about. Domesticated fowl and western rings, and then you can raise. There's 6 within our neighborhood, only female birds.
Chicken, duck,
actually,
goose,
we've
turkey.
already addressed this too. Domestic fowl means any fowl, including a chicken, duck, goose, turkey, pigeon, or other fowl, excluding roosters or cocks that are kept within an enclosure or coop in a fenced area.
So the keeping of peacocks is not permitted.
Not the males.
Well, it says or other
It
fowl.
says or other fowl. So
We call it peacocks. Usually,
Okay, it's not a big deal. Just,
Yes.
it seemed like we could delete roosters and we're still good.
I just
So we're-
understand why we're just.
The roosters appears only in the other definition, domestic fowl.
Want peacocks in mine.
As we enter the world of S's. Sediment. No comments. Semi-nude.
This would be the adult business related
I
definitions.
think we do ourselves a favor if we ignore all those and just leave them as it was worked out previously.
Service building.
for the semi-nude.
Mary, you have a comment?
Well, actually, backing up right after roosters, I would suggest that we reinsert the definition that we had for schools. And then we had various kinds of schools that could fit under that, trade schools, colleges and university, private and public. I think just having one definition and list those under that would be appropriate.
The category in the use table is education, and it calls out all of those different, that's on page 7 of the use table. So should we, I agree with you though, Larry, put all of those under education.
Education, schools, whatever.
Okay,
Guys, I'm having a little technical difficulty. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second and bring this back up. I don't know what's going on with it.
Okay,
Keep going, but I'm gonna have to stop sharing for a sec.
so when it comes to schools, sometimes communities will want to differentiate where schools are located, that I've seen them where they're much more comfortable with like elementary, middle school, secondary schools, even pre-K type education, pretty freely located throughout a community, especially in residential areas, because you put the school where the kids are. It's when you get into trade schools, which potentially have noise depending upon what they're teaching. You know, if it's machining, welding, some of those kind of things, or community colleges, because your traffic patterns can be considerably different. You know, in terms of people coming and going, or class schedules, or you know, all of the students tend to drive, you know, in a more suburban setting than an urban one where you've got you know, bus systems. So those are things that you may want to consider in terms of differentiating. I can see where a trade school, community college might fall under, or adult education, you know, versus the pre-K through 12.
Well, I was gonna say, there's only, the purpose of this is to decide what use is permitted in which zone. There's the three different schools we're talking about: private, parochial school, technical school, and university/college, all have Cs in all districts, except technical school was not even permitted as a C in the HSCLI district. So we're creating them. And you're right, there might be a difference, but we make them all conditional uses anyways. So we can separate them when we want, or not separate them. Yeah. But I'm not sure the difference, the significance of separating.
That we need to call them out.
You know, and that's one of the interesting things about Woodland Park is the number of things that our ordinance lists as conditional uses versus in a lot of other communities, when you've got appropriate use standards in place, a lot of times there are permitted use that, yes, you can, my favorite, bear with me, but yes, you can do multifamily housing in a multifamily housing zone that, you know, it's meeting these type of landscaping, parking, setbacks, you know, all those kind of standards get met. So yes, you can do that at that location, and it doesn't require, you know, the public hearing process as part of citing that. So
I can't see us coming up with revised code that creates three separate categories of schools and differentiates some particularity in which zone, and further define, and especially defines all the characteristics of them that would make them a P in some and not permitted in others.
I didn't say Woodland Park was ready for that.
Well, then it goes to, do we need to define any of them? If in fact they're all either conditional or permitted.
Well, we don't know, because we're going to spend a lot of time going through the use table and,
Well, except I said, the use table just has them all as condition.
yeah.
So we're creating work for ourselves, generating three types of categories of all of which are significant, could well be significant uses. If we just,
Family care is PC.
Yeah.
So family and childcare in your home is PC, but yet we can have a school in every neighborhood as conditions.
if we just said school is a school, we could just put one row of Cs and have one less definition, but.
Yes.
I don't think one less definition is going to save us much of anything. Just
But if there were a reason to have them separately defined, we should have a definition, but it doesn't appear that there is at this point.
I think
Well-
there is reason to potentially separately define the adult education versus, you know, the youth education.
Well, yeah, if you assume that adult education includes
Trade schools, community college.
technical school or university or college. Private and parochial schools, you believe, are K through 12.
Typically, those are what I'm used to, those.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because adult education is going to be automobiles, parking lots, nights,
Do we have any
activity.
jurisdiction over public schools?
Well, but you can also have adult education at a public high school.
Mhm.
you know,
But that's a business. I mean, that's the high school's renting the space. To 'em. If you have a class there, it's not like they don't get to use the building for free.
If we separate these out, what we're saying is if the high school starts a program for adult vocational education, they have to come and get permission to do it. It's a conditional use.
Mhm.
Is not otherwise permitted. Is
That's
that the example, something we want to try and get into?
no, I'm just saying if they're gonna build a high school versus a middle school in a neighborhood where the kids are, close to the kids, a high school is a different animal than a junior high,
Which is why they're all conditional use, because
because you wanna consider the parking ramifications and this adult education opportunity, all those things.
And then Ken brought up an important question and distinction, and that was whether or not we even have any authority over the siting of
Public schools.
public
Public
schools.
schools, yeah.
And I may be working off of old information, but it was my understanding that we as the local government have authority over siting, location, zoning, where they can be placed. But when it comes to the physical construction of the building,
State architect.
that's the state office that actually oversees the construction of the building, the plan review, any inspections, that kind of thing.
Should somebody? if they
So
want-
unless that's changed, that's where we left off.
That's my understanding,
Okay.
yes, but we don't include public schools in our matrix.
It's because they're looked at by age group
Yeah,
and
private
building
slash public
permits,
Picks up.
excuse me,
Oh, you're right.
building permits are different than the zoning and citing of them. So I can see where that's not broken apart. In the use matrix.
Would
That's
that
my
be-
misunderstanding. If they're not private schools, are they parochial? Always
Well,
thought
and
it
our
was
ma-
more religious-based schools.
Our matrix could be lacking in terms of even identifying,
Yeah, unless you just want to call it government use. It's not really that either.
no. At a,
Don't anticipate any new schools, but 20 years from now, I don't know.
I'll be dead by then.
Doesn't matter, Valerie.
We'll name it after you.
Okay,
Another same terms and conditional service.
conditional use.
So going back to Larry's recommendation. The definitions of the different types of schools. Could that be under one definition? Since at this,
Schools slash private parochial schools slash trade schools slash universities, colleges. Yeah, that, if we're gonna have all three, that's an easier way to follow it. You have to, for people to find it.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely don't spread them out.
Yeah,
We don't want another technical, we don't want to.
like, like we're doing with signs.
Yeah, so we said school, comma, parochial, school, comma, private, school, comma, public, school, comma,
Exactly.
technical, school, comma, college, university.
Right.
Put them all together or in one definition and just list them as some
One area here.
We'll let Jen handle that one. Find one, a good one from somebody else.
In sediment, semi-nude, we were gonna skip over. The next page.
Not quite. Under, between sediment and semi-nude. I'd like to reintroduce, warehouse for self-storage. We had,
Huh?
Self-storage warehouse.
yeah,
yeah, I thought we'd left that up to Jen to put that in a.
It-
Address it somewhere.
yeah,
and you're thinking in terms of mini storage?
yeah,
Okay,
yep. You have a-
Yeah, I think we
Probably have it in
captured that
storage.
comment earlier in this document. So, yeah.
Okay,
Service buildings, Mary?
well, the definition for a service building on page 32, actually comes from the mobile home park regulations. So I'm thinking that for a service
Oh.
building, we just need
Huh?
to call that a mobile home park, comma, service building.
I agree. 'cause
Memorial
it-
Park has a service building by this definition.
Mhm. Well,
I think that's especially useful because reading it by itself, you're wondering, what the heck are we talking about?
Exactly. That's where it
And
came
I
from.
guess we could build a public restroom down in the park, which. I guess Memorial Park doesn't have laundry facilities, but
No, but it just says,
Wash your
it
clothes in the
says.
creek.
It's on the. Made with laundry fields and other such facilities that may be required. But
No, I think you're right. That's associated with mobile home park.
Yep.
Is it also associated with
Campground.
campgrounds?
campgrounds.
But we didn't have a definition for the campground service building. And that's exactly where this came from, so. Maybe we need both. Or make a generic. Instead of both. Nah, you don't want to have a building housing toilet and bathing facilities.
I think we have, it probably has to be looked at what those ordinances specifically say, since that's what's referenced.
Yeah. Within the definition itself, we may want to add associated with RV park, campground, or similar I can't think of the right word.
Recreational use?
Well, no, some of it's like a common living space, because sometimes an apartment complex may have a separate laundry building. Sometimes they locate common washers down, you know, in the lower level, sometimes as a separate building.
Where they put that under mini storage.
So
okay.
it's actually an
Used.
it's actually an accessory use to one of these other more established kind of things. So it's not like it's a primary use that should show up on a property by itself. Because a laundromat is a different, that's a use, you know, that would be like in a commercial zone typically.
So why would this be in?
Because it comes out of the camp, the mobile home park. It comes out of the mobile home park regs, and that's this dates back to like maybe even the 50s, 70s.
1969.
Yeah. About then, yeah. You'll see that all over the state of Colorado from that same era.
I'd be inclined to leave it as is, and if we come across places where it's used, like mobile home parks, we'll see if it still fits, and it may be that some other place with that knowledge, it's useful to say or a
Yeah.
campground or something else.
It is, I'm looking at the only place in the use table right now, the draft use table for mobile homes. It just has, it's permitted in the mobile home park zone. What is the purpose of calling out the service building?
It must, I'm assuming someplace in the mobile home park rules, that's where is it used, it must say something about when you should have a service building and when you should not, or some of the rules about it.
When you think back to what a mobile home used to be, typically you did not have laundry facilities in the mobile home. Or the travel trailers that sometimes got cited in trailer parks. So that's where you would see that central facility that would allow for that. Or potentially in a campground. Some of these more luxurious campgrounds include the bathhouse for the folks that are tent camping, as well as laundry facilities for those folks that are, you know, out for weeks on end, you know, in their RV touring the country. So.
Well, your suggestion of adding the thought here with that it's like associated with a campground or an RV park. I mean, I think that's a good way to put it. Personally, I wouldn't use the term mobile home park because we go back to the same old stuff. I would call it a recreational vehicle campground park, but it's a good way to define it. Then you're not including memorial parks, bathrooms. I mean, there's lots of little parks that have porta potties, so there you go, in the city.
And the list of definitions does a couple of things that, yes, a lot of these terms show up as uses in the use matrix. but some of them don't, like rooster isn't a use that's gonna show up in that use matrix. So service building provides a useful definition and context for what do we consider a service building, but it doesn't show up, as a designated use in that matrix. But the note I made for ourselves is if we've got associated use standards, that term may show up, within those use standards. That in terms of, potentially that can be, or must be called out on the site plan, any service building locations. So that's another way to get to it. So I guess for us, it sounds like we're pretty comfortable with the definition. It's just mostly making sure that we tie it to the right things. Is that what I'm hearing?
That summarizes it.
Okay,
That ordinance that it references, one of them for the 2020, the 1383 is actually for mobile home regulation.
Mhm.
So flood damage. So,
Yeah, so
mhm.
it's part, it was part of 16.
yeah, it's all part of the service building.
Well, then again, maybe we need two definitions. One's specific for the mobile home park. And the other one's more generic.
It's
No,
probably the
actually-
same thing.
No, we don't really need one generically. We just need it for a mobile home park.
Call it good.
Or, well, no, I take that back. You also need it for campgrounds.
Well, that's,
So does
And that's what-
service building describe a service building? Is this adequately described here?
it describes what's in it. It doesn't have to necessarily describe what property it's on. It describes what's in it. Because it isn't gonna be, if it's required as part of a campground, it'll be in the requirements for the campground itself when it's built. You're not gonna have a bathroom without, a campground without a toilet. If you could, it's gonna be taken.
Under conditional use. Good to move on? Service station. Any comments? Some of you, Larry?
My only one was that not all service stations do repair. But
Didn't we have some convenience stores and something else dispensing fuel earlier on?
yeah, we did.
Okay. Thought so.
So it's a service station that also rents trucks and trailers, I guess. I mean,
And I'm recommending that we change the title of that because we have quite a few definitions that begin with auto. And that's where this really fits, auto, comma, vehicle service station. The same way with the next one, auto vehicle with truck and trailer repair.
Except for the definition goes for more than that. It says used for dispensing fuel, servicing and repair, accessory use, installation of lubricants. It's a whole gauntlet of stuff. It's not,
Does a service station have to sell gasoline? Do we have another place for an automobile repair facility? Is that already covered?
there were autos.
Yeah, automobile repair is separate.
Yeah.
We do have auto repair already.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So again, I was just looking at being consistent with our other auto uses.
Yeah, so it's just another auto use and should go,
Back under
What's different
days.
about this auto use? It's not a convenience store selling gas. It's not an auto rental, it's not an auto repair heavy, it's not an auto repair light.
It's the old fashioned
storage.
service station that had the repair bay. You get your oil changed or tire fixed and I had a mechanic on duty kind of thing. They
See-
used to be more popular, but they're
But if
Is
you
that
say
getting
that,
more
What's the
rare. now.
difference from
where
auto
does
repair
the
light?
U-Haul place fall in this?
It's a rental facility.
So we have that in a separate
See, we picked it
definition.
up before. What the zoning had currently done apparently is this automobile / gasoline service station. It picks up a bunch of these. We've now created a bunch of separate auto repair heavy, auto repair
Yeah.
light. Almost or perhaps vitiating the need for the definition of a service station because we created.
so many others.
Remember when we first introduced this and we talked about all these different signs that your development code desperately needs to be updated? This right here is one of those time warps where you can see what this term has been over many different points of time, from the traditional, gas, fuel service and auto repair, all the way to today's convenience store with fuel sales. So that's part of the reason you've got such a hodgepodge of definitions that probably do need to be looked at more holistically in terms of what are the contemporary definitions that better serve how the industry looks at things. So that's my 2 cents worth on this as we look at this stuff. And sometimes there is that distinction between, heavy equipment repair and maintenance. Truck stops are a separate beast versus, just the little C-store that sells both gas and diesel. That there's, or versus where they're just a repair shop or just auto body repair. So those are some of the distinctions and why you're seeing such a hodgepodge of definitions in this code, in my opinion.
If you keep service station, I'm not sure why you need the with truck and trailer rental, because it at least with the way this thing's written, it has all the other stuff, and then it says may include truck and trailer rental. Well, then if it only may, then it's not that part of that definition.
If you
So
go
you
back,
call it, you could have service station.
but if you go back to that first section where we've inserted all of the different definitions for what you can do with an auto,
Yeah.
I would say, number one, we do talk about rental in that section at the beginning of definitions. So we don't need service station with truck and trailer rental.
We took it out. Auto rental as a definition was removed. I got strikes through it.
And the auto rental doesn't include heavy trucks.
Yeah, that was the strikes.
Rental of automobiles.
So,
Light trucks.
I think those two definitions, though, that we're looking at right now, service station and service station with truck and trailer rental, can somehow be pulled up to the auto section.
Emphasized a little bit.
Yeah, it goes back to what is the casual reader looking for? He's not going to go over this entire document.
No, so it's really gonna boil down to, can staff figure out where stuff is?
Well, yeah, you could just use the service station, but add the last sentence from the with truck or trailer rental into that, because otherwise the first part of it's identical.
I agree.
Agreed. So is automobile service station probably appropriate if it doesn't have all this stuff included in one of our other automobile sections?
Oh, why not?
Just move this up there with automobile service station.
Mhm.
At a minimum, we can agree to that.
Yep.
Everybody.
I think somebody said, maybe it was you, Karen, or Carol, that these two definitions need to be tweaked with what we have already
Under-
reviewed.
Yeah.
The distinctions between all the definitions or why have.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and then I
And
think
then-
some of
then-
this,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think some of this goes back to looking at our use matrix and do we have things in there that are currently undefined? And so this isn't exactly a term, but it's listed as truck and trailer rental as an accessory use to an automobile service station. That's the title of a use in our matrix currently.
Just
So-
look at page 38, look at the bottom of the page. As you got straight on your instructions.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so like I said, well, and that's a different one, says trailer and truck rental as the principal use of a lot having a minimum street frontage
So
per
crazy.
versus truck and trailer rental as an accessory
That
use to an
includes the
automobile
service.
service station. So I think that's what you're seeing with some of these definitions is the attempt to plug some of the holes in terms of not having something defined. So I think part of what we're flagging is perhaps some of the things we've listed in the use matrix need to be better defined and perhaps go by a different label, based on today's world. So I think that's part of where you're struggling right now. And Lou, you were gonna say something?
Well, the one thing I was gonna talk about is thinking a little ahead, both with the auto service station and this is, what do we do for recharge stations? Is a recharge considered fuel? Or do we need to say something
Let's see what it's
special about that in the appropriate
Remember what
place?
it's called?
A lot of times those are set up as accessory to a different facility right now. And I can't remember if we have something already or not, Jen.
We do.
I'm here. Which one was that though?
Electric vehicle charging.
I don't think we did. I think we had micro mobility in here, which is different. I don't remember seeing electric vehicle charging. Let's,
There is a.
But like I said, a
What's
lot of
the
times they're
document?
accessory, because right now we've already got vehicle chargers over in Bergstrom Park. So the
Yeah.
primary use is the park. And
That's
There.
micro mobility parking. space.
they're really accessory to that park. And we're looking at citing some other vehicle chargers back here in the city hall parking lot. So it doesn't change the primary use. It's just a specialized parking space.
Is that called a docking hub?
Docking-
no, the
that's for
docking-
micro mobility.
yeah, the docking hub is for your e-bikes and e-scooters. We do not have electric vehicle charging station as a definition in here, so.
Should we? Is that not as a separate use, but is that something that needs to be defined? Because when we're talking about accessory uses, that it's.
You could put
Are
it
they,
under transient facilities.
I just-
Bus terminals. and-
are recharging? Are they acceptable in all parking lots and all?
I don't think any of us know.
Usually the way that we handle that is not in the definitions, but an actual standard in your parking section where we'll say, you know, if you're requiring electric vehicle charging, we would put that in, or if it's just allowed as a use, and there's 3 tiers, there's type 1. Oh, now I can't remember, type 1, type 2. There's 3 different types of chargers, and we usually specify the amperage voltage of each of those so that it's clear what kind or, you know, where the different thresholds are.
The kind of thing I was concerned with, again, is the impact on traffic
Mm.
and parking, at least it appears from what I've read. In the near term, you can run into situations where you may have a few chargers someplace, and it may take an hour to charge a vehicle, and you may have a lineup of vehicles waiting to get charged, especially if it's in an area where they could get food and other things while they're waiting. And I'm just thinking of I don't know how to handle that, but I'm thinking of what the impact of that is on traffic flow and things like that, where you could have a lineup.
So bottom line is we've not addressed it in the new code revision.
Right. And then, like I said, our conversation here is focused on, you know, kind of what is the industry standard and where is this going? And a lot of times it is, you know, accessory to another use. Versus, I don't know that there's too many truly dedicated charging lots. You know, I don't know that that's really taken off at this point in time, or if that will, since the move more is towards, I think, getting that charging set up in your home to be able to charge at your house overnight with your own
If
vehicle.
we're trying to attract tourist trade to the town,
Yeah,
we may have to have more.
So I'll
charging
give you my
stations.
electrical engineering opinion. The industry will probably have to go to standardized battery systems that you'll swap out in your car in 5 minutes. And you'll be like getting the propane tank changed on your gas. You used to have to refill those everywhere you went. Now they just exchange them. So eventually, if the electrical car industry is going to work, it's going to have a battery exchange. So tourists will come in, they'll recharge their car, they'll just pull into the station, batteries out, they've got a full car.
There are some countries and some fleet users where that exists today.
Yeah, I think that's the way but you know, temporarily you'll have to have something to charge electric vehicles if you. But there'll be businesses that put them in to draw people to their business, so
Mhm.
that'll be a primary way to get them in.
We do have a charging station now.
Yeah, like I said, there's one at Bergstrom Park.
Right.
Where it's, like I said, it's accessory to the park itself.
So I guess,
And maybe that's probably a really good way, rather than trying to lead this, and Woodland Park isn't gonna be a leader. Is handle it just like you guys have, thinking about it. And keep an eye and look at what some of the other more touristy areas have done and are doing periodically, and see if that's something that we would need to revise in the code downstream. Not try to guess what we're gonna have to have today.
and we're not trying to rewrite the code with this revision. This is just consolidation and clarity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have no problem when we look at the definition again for the service station. It talks about the retail dispensing of vehicle fuels. Well, is electricity a fuel?
That's where I was wondering if we wanted to talk about fuel and or electric power or electric
Sale. of
batteries or everything,
fuel.
yeah. Energy.
I think we want to not get into it for now.
I do think that that's one of those things in terms of that broader category that we want to look at holistically. You know, where are the lines between what's a convenience store that dispenses fuel? What's a repair facility? You know, what are those different thresholds between those things? That's what I personally think needs to be looked at.
I'd agree.
Was there agreement here that service station and servicing with truck and trailer rental for now can, the word auto can be added in front? And maybe not the one with truck and trailer rental, but auto can be added in front of it. So it gets-
And move it to the beginning.
I thought we were just gonna move the may include line up to the one above it, because the rest of the thing's identical.
Let's leave it where it is for now, since I think it's potentially gonna. But so until we look at it holistically with some of those other similar definitions.
Setbacks, we should be good with that. Sexual encounter center, we probably don't want to touch.
Well, okay, yes and no.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, up in the front, in the adult section, there's like 8 different things, all defined way up there. Now, if you're gonna be real picky here, all those other ones specifically say adult. This doesn't say anything about any age thing.
No, we don't want to, we don't say adult only, because you're right, it doesn't say anything about age. Just
Well-
don't say adult.
Well, okay, but you know what I mean, it's like. All of this stuff is covered in those other things, why do we need another?
This is part of however that was created once upon a time with the adult business use. So I'm recommending we don't dive into those in depth, because I think they were pretty heavily vetted when they were developed. Yeah, no touching, yeah.
I'd like the city council to be able to say nothing here has changed.
I understand, I just have a problem when it only just says a place where 2 or more people may congregate, associate, whatever, and it has nothing to do with them. It having to be adults, it could be a bunch of pedophiles, I'm real sorry,
Excluded from use in our city, isn't that?
No, it.
Oh, that was certainly.
It's- yeah.
Heavy industrial, right?
They're industrial, light industrial.
We have one, I'm
Uh,
just-
I like the
But-
idea of using the word adult, because we
Yeah.
have so many definitions.
Put that up.
Adult corporate.
Yeah, but I don't want to use the word adult, because then it may exclude other problems.
What?
Things, younger people that we don't want to not.
But
apply to
that definition came from that time frame where we were trying to address adult. Adult entertainment, so that definition should go up under the
If
adult.
someone wants to
I-
use
the
use
whole
that use,
point
they
is-
can search the definitions and find what they need to find.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
whole
make
point
it
is to be able to find them and to go back and look at those use standards associated with adult businesses. This is probably the term itself. And it doesn't start with adult, there is
Doesn't
like a
start with
weird
an
line we're walking in terms of like signs.
Yeah, if we
needing to
change
be
it, we gotta
accurate
change it
versus
in the rest of the
some
documents to
things that
match, which is
don't
another
quite
option.
line
Well,
up clearly.
it-
So
In
I
the
recommend
adult,
leaving it alone.
in the adult-oriented business thing that was already addressed up front, it lists a bunch of stuff and it says, or sexual encounter center.
So
mean,
then
but-
you would go and look at, yeah, no, I think we're okay. I really think we're okay with where it is.
But page 2 and page 3 in chapter 7 certainly identifies everything that says adult.
Except,
Adult
Yeah.
arcade,
Right.
adult bookstore, adult cabaret, adult entertainer, adult entertainment. Adult motel, adult motion picture theater, adult oriented, sexually, no, they crossed out the word
Right.
sexually, it's just adult oriented business.
Right, that's where it, at the end, it has that other thing in there.
If we go to
Yeah.
agriculture.
No, I'm okay with it.
Refer to from definition within the adult category, so I'm good to leave it as is.
We talk a lot about dope and sexual encounter.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just saying that's already covered under adult businesses, so why do we need it at all?
Because the term appears in one of the other definitions.
Okay.
Yeah, one of.
Then why don't you, well, do the suggestion is putting the word adult in front of that, comma,
Yeah,
sexual encounter
and you
center,
gotta
moving
go
it up
fi- and you gotta
front.
go find the other place too, and then.
Leave it where it is,
Exactly.
please. Because within the definition up front where it says sexual encounter center,
Mhm.
it doesn't say adult sexual encounter center, it just says sexual encounter center. So if you wanna
Under
go-
adult oriented business.
yeah, but it's within one of those other definitions. So what is that? I think
And it's quoting the
I-
exact same section of the ordinance
I am,
on this one and the sexual encounter center. It's got the same ordinance quotes.
yes, it does. And I am comfortable with where it's located because that's exactly how it's laid out currently.
So here's the deal. If we change it to adult sexual encounter center, it has to go to adult sexual encounter center everywhere.
Right.
And that may not line up with state and other ordinances that were put in or that generated some of this, but that would be the simple thing, Karen, is if we change it everywhere, just did a mass, change. And it combines it with all the other adult definitions and it just adds a one word and changes it everywhere throughout the document. That would finish it too.
I
As an
don't think
option.
it's necessary. The way the definitions are up front for adult oriented businesses.
I agree. I think it ought to be included with the word adult.
Nina has provided a comment
Yeah.
that says there is no need to add adult because our adult entertainment ordinance makes it clear that this use is just for adults.
Then why do we have the word adult in every other section?
For all the other definitions.
I'm not, it's okay.
But when we originally set out to do this, we were trying to fix the documents, right? Combine them so we had easier, more clarity. Nobody's got an issue with the definition here, so let's not move it just for the sake of moving it tonight. And if it becomes, appropriate to put it as a sub definition, you could leave it, you could put it in both places.
Yeah.
And then it's still fixed here too.
The other thing I want to add is, like all businesses or industries or professions, sometimes you end up with these terms of art or things that have particular meaning. Electrical engineering, and I can't remember what you did. You were an engineer, Valerie.
Aeronautical.
What was it? Oh, yeah, aerospace. Does everything start with A with it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. But the point is that there's terms there that have very specific definitions and meanings that to a layperson are somewhat nonsensical sometimes. But so if somebody else who's not, intimately involved in that industry is making a suggestion, sometimes it doesn't make sense because when you're within that field and profession, this is what you're looking for. So, and I don't have a great example to give you, other than like a funny story about what ASD stands for.
Sounds like it's probably bad.
No, automatic self-destruct.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
which means something totally different, down at the chemical depot in Pueblo. Automated service, something, it wasn't automatic self-destruct. So automatic.
Automatic service disconnect.
Yeah, I think
There you
that's what it
go.
was. So anyhow, that just, sometimes they have specific meanings in industries. So that's, I think, part of where occasionally we get hung up here is, that there's things, as a trained planner that we look at and we see, like the term like group home or religious land use that are somewhat like, what, really? What are you people thinking? But it's got other connotations to it, so.
So I mean, I accept the fact we had to have all the adult stuff in here because of all the other stuff that happened before, but every other thing that refers to this ordinance, this section, the 1051-206, with the 316-206, they're all in the same place. This is the only one with that reference that is not in the same place. That's my point.
It does, if you do look at page 3, chapter 7, the last 3 words of
Right.
adult-oriented business does say, or sexual encounter center, and then if you go and look. Sexual encounter center, that is the definition of it, with
Right.
2 or more people congregating.
Right,
So
and it's easy.
maybe it should just, and you don't want to move it here. It could be possibly moved to be underneath the adult-oriented business.
That's what Valerie's advocating for.
Me too.
I'm not gonna die on the hill. We got plenty of other things to do.
Oh, no.
The ability,
Let
it's
it
just,
go.
it's like whatever, just.
We have no doubt
It's-
that no matter what age you are, if you're committing these crimes in our city, our police chief will.
I would hope so.
So is there a consensus to add adult or not? to?
You guys are in charge. I
don't see that.
did go through looking to see if there was if that section was anywhere else, and it's not referenced anywhere else. Except for in the adult thing in this.
I agree with Val. I mean, what we tried to do is to consolidate like topics and like definitions. And if that's the case, just move this to the adult section. That's what it's referring to. It doesn't refer to any other type of use except under adult entertainment. So just move it up there and call it adult service center.
Nude model studio also include the word. adult.
Semi-nude also.
Oh, it's-
There's a bunch of them strewn throughout there.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. That one.
Calls out what an adult business is, and it specifically says the sexual encounter center is an adult oriented business. I mean, there's
Right.
nothing else that says anything different.
If-
They all say that the sexual encounter center is absolutely an adult business.
If we're gonna change it before doing it, I would like to ask our consultant to have done a thorough review and searched for these that are all the right place.
Yeah.
It's not otherwise used. I mean, it's creating an opportunity to make a mistake.
So let's go
I
back to the example of semi-nude. Where does that need to appear?
Not sure why we get it.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
There's a definition of semi-nude. Where does it need to appear?
No.
You just prove we
and-
don't have a good definition to move that, so let's leave it as is.
Yeah, and I'm wrong. I missed that one. So the semi-nude thing, I'm not sure what it,
I'm just
Where it
recommending we be
falls.
consistent. If we're gonna put all the sign stuff together, all the auto stuff together, all the retail stuff together. Put all of the
Well,
adult
Our
entertainment stuff
use table
together.
doesn't break these out separately. Just says sexually oriented businesses.
Right.
Or adult oriented business, I guess, is the new terminology.
and it,
And then it defines it in what those are and then refers back to the various types.
So it's easy to find it. When you find an adult business, you look at what they are and you'll see what your
Yeah.
choices are.
and the semi-nude thing is under, the term semi-nude is under adult entertainer in the front.
So I have a suggestion, because these are all terms that are part of this adult-oriented business definition. We could do something a little bit different with this one. I've seen this done a lot with codes. We could have adult-oriented business, and then under this would be indented subsets of adult-oriented business, which have definitions for all of these, and the semi-nude, that's because they're all definitions of each other. And then you're not listing them out as
Out of context.
adult, blah, 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 blah. You just have the definitions right there with it, so that, because it would For me, it would be easier to read that way, say, well, what is an adult motion picture or sexual encounter center? If I wanted to know a definition, it would just be right there with that whole package.
Agree.
I support.
good idea.
Nina's
Yeah.
Okay,
proposal.
Okay.
Well, short-term rental.
On hold.
A new definition that I recommend that we not try and adopt here, because you question where are you gonna use it and such. This is a subject for the city council to address, and they will have a definition of short-term rental and then the ordinance dealing with short-term rental.
You guys.
So, well,
Think I might have to go to the restroom.
cry.
Sidewalks, any comments?
Was that an agreement that we take this, strike it?
I think we tabled it.
I think it's a hold.
What I would do, Jen, is leave the term short-term rental, but in terms of a definition, I would make a note that says pending a separate ordinance adoption. TBD. Or, yeah, TBD, you know, TBD, separate ordinance adoption, awaiting city council direction.
I would like to add the abbreviation STR to the definition.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having her strike the whole definition
Well,
for now, but just. Yeah. Making a note regarding its status.
Yeah, it's not gonna be the city council, it's gonna be the citizens, they're gonna signature, get it on the ballot.
But it'll still be
we're not
an
ready to define
ordinance.
it.
I would suggest that our code revisions that we're working on now will probably get done before short-term rentals will.
Very possible.
We could probably start a pool on that and take bets.
That's a good idea. You can.
Although that's
Like
probably
it's like a-
gambling, which is not permitted somewhere, but you know,
Like a Super Bowl,
Yeah.
thing, you get to pick the box.
yeah.
In 2022, we started this process of short-term rental.
No comments were made on sidewalks, nor on signs.
actually, there was one on sidewalk. It just got
Oh, I'm sorry.
placed wrong. So it says, so the path on the side of 67 is not a sidewalk because it is asphalt currently, or certainly. Val, it looks like you made this comment.
That's because the definition says that they are concrete construction, not asphalt.
Oh, God.
I think that's a trail, isn't it?
That's a trail. That's a dang trail.
Motorbike.
But don't we have sidewalks that are built of asphalt? Or is the sidewalks all concrete? Or is that?
The ordinance has said concrete for many years.
Well, again, that's.
I don't think anybody's got any concrete side or side asphalt sidewalks.
Yeah, but of course, if you're gonna change it, remember in certain new developments, sidewalks are required unless there's a waiver and such too. And that means that they're supposed to be concrete unless you're, if you change it here, you're softening the.
You're
development.
letting them put in asphalt.
Someone
If you
have,
changed it to say add asphalt, you'd be technically letting somebody use it, wouldn't you?
Well, there's-
You say
There's-
typically concrete.
There's engineering specifications for the city that specify how things get constructed. So it is kind of curious that a sidewalk here specifies concrete.
Is that a standard?
I
And if
I-
so,
don't
delete it?
know.
I think we ought to leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Even if it is a standard, it clarifies.
I'm gonna ask our city engineer about that one. To see if there's some other specification out there. Or perhaps what the MUTCD potentially defines a sidewalk as. And that's the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
All my projects that had sidewalks required, they were all concrete in every jurisdiction. We built a building.
In concrete's probably one of those where it goes the distance better, longer than an asphalt surface and asphalt material would. So that's, I'm sure, part of the reason sidewalks are typically made out of concrete.
Let it be.
Sign and sign area, any questions? Skipping over something? Site plan.
Yeah, again, we list a lot of standards and we do talk about site plan. We have a place for site plan review. We talk about what's required. I think by trying to list some of these at a minimum, they could be interpreted as standard, so I'd recommend that site plan means a plan to scale showing uses and structures proposed for a parcel of land and strike the rest of it.
Do we have good enough language elsewhere where we, in our development section, we're talking about a site plan? It will have a longer list.
The ZDP has a list of requirements for submittal.
Was the site, ZDP is something other than a site. plan.
Like, it requires a site
Approved,
plan.
then you gotta get a ZDP ready.
Either way, it shouldn't be in the definition. We should either have it in the checklist or in the application procedures.
Yes,
Good
Yes.
point.
So is it coming out or just having the one sentence?
Just the one sentence probably is okay. I mean, you could remove the whole definition. It
The whole thing goes after.
doesn't
the
really help.
Parcel of land, period.
I agree with Lee. Social activities. Solar generation private. Comments. Yes,
Just a sentence thing, you've got solar generation private and then private solar generation. Can't you just say solar generation private means any privately owned structure?
Mhm.
Or am I just,
No, you're right.
Yeah, we can reverse that.
solid waste facility.
again, I looked at that and I thought of the word transfer station. We talked about this just a while ago, when we were talking about wet waste. Because I don't think we had a definition for a solid waste transfer station. I know we have one.
Yeah, but they're all
We do have a definition for a
prohibited.
transfer station.
But
This is for the burial disposal.
my comment on the things that was, this one said something about recycling centers, I think why I did that was because there's a materials recovery facility, and that to me, I read as a recycling thing. So does that really belong in there?
You're right.
Or recovered
I mean,
materials
The
processing
recycling
facility?
center is a subset potentially of this.
Right, because there's also recovered materials processing facility, I don't. Just a question.
Yeah, because if in fact we conditionally permit recycling, this definition says we will not, because solid waste facilities are prohibited across all zones.
I think this is referring to a landfill or incinerator.
Okay.
But materials recovery facility does sound like recycling.
If we had a landfill, we could have the accessory use of recycling on site, I would imagine. I don't think we're allowing any landfills, and incinerators in the city.
Recycling facilities are conditionally allowed
Yes.
in various places.
Right, it's just that isn't a
but-
materials recovery facility and
She's right.
recovered materials processing, that's recycling things.
That Val is right, because
Yes,
that recycling facility is part of the subset of solid waste facility, and solid waste facility is prohibited. So we're creating additional uses for recycling facilities that could never arise because they'd always be prohibited.
agreed. So the material recovery facility should be eliminated from this definition.
Yeah, and I think the recovered materials processing facility also, I could be wrong if I've got that definition wrong in my head.
I don't know. Recovered materials processing facility. I don't know.
I don't know.
I think again, it just kind of lumps it together with when we're talking about wet trash. Recycling, we just need to be very clear that we're not unintentionally prohibiting something because of the definition.
Yeah. I don't see the harm in deleting the recovered materials processing facility part also, but am I missing something?
Yeah, that would, I think that's supposed to be like if you had aluminum recycling. You recycled it, and then this would be the plant that actually processed the aluminum cans into aluminum, so I think you want to leave it,
Oh,
but. Because we don't want to promote that, we just want to promote
Yeah,
recycling, right?
but materials recovery facility.
Let's take,
No, processing facility.
Yeah, yeah, I started doing,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
yeah. I'm slow, but I'm old. That is to me a definition of recycling, but the processing
Right.
is different. You're right.
Yep, exactly.
or remove materials recovery facility from the definition. No other changes.
The wiki definition is kind of interesting. It's particularly the delivery of recycled materials picked up from residential or commercial customers. And then they do the sorting and recovery and then sell it out to others as a processed product rather than a direct from the consumer product. So it's a facility that does some recycling, but it's not necessarily a place where a person would take something to be recycled. It's just a center where they process recycled materials.
So where they sort
They sort,
recyclable.
crunch it, grind it up, make it into something that can sell to somebody else. According to
That's the definition for processing.
materials recovery facility, materials reclamation facility, or multi-reuse facility. They call it materials recycling facility too, in some cases. But it's for the process, or the recovery facility is for processing, and
Based on that definition, I suggest we take that.
I'm just saying our
out of the definition as
definitions,
well.
Yeah,
you know. It's covered in the recycle stuff.
Take those two clauses out. Special events. Miss Valerie, you had a comment?
I'm sure I did. I was in the mood when I did this.
You were asking to include art fairs.
Yeah, where is that one? Yeah, why didn't it, that does it not include it? Because there's an art fair, there is an art fair definition. Says by way of illustrations, the special events include street fairs of any nature, flea markets, farmers markets, parades, rodeos, craft shows, whatever.
It
Car
does say
shows,
art.
carnivals, I mean,
Or music festivals.
art and music festivals, so do we need this one then? It's art fair definition, it's a question. I like to shorten things.
I think these arts included under festivals, like. I'm content to leave it as is. Special planning area.
This whole section is talking about natural areas. So I think we ought to name it that.
Huh.
Natural areas including flooding, steep slopes, geologic hazards, natural wildlife and other hazards. So I would suggest that we, instead of we would call this a special sensitive or significant planning area. And then we would change the last part of the sentence to read other site features requiring additional planning or protection or preservation considerations. I think I have that written up there. Because we might have other special planning areas that would not fall under these natural functions.
It talks about flooded areas, steep slope areas, geologic hazards. And other hazards which aren't that. We're not trying to protect those. It's just that special considerations need for those. Areas.
Yep.
So I don't see them. Need to change it.
Right, but what I heard Larry say is we may use that phrase to describe something else besides those natural topographic characteristics.
It's not just natural, it's historic, archaeological,
Yeah, yeah.
ecological.
Is that
or other site
inclusive enough?
requirements, but it's special,
Inclusive enough?
special planning areas otherwise used in our ordinances or something else.
I have bells going off in my head around that term and I'm not sure why.
I'm not sure why it's used in our current ordinance, but
Well, no, because part of where the bell's going off is in relation to flood hazard.
Mm.
Whether or not that's related to that.
Aaron, I think you might be right, but we might have to look into that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, before we do anything with this one, I think we would like to double check it.
Special use trails. No. Specific anatomical areas, is that another adult definition?
There's three in a row there. We got them again. I'm not sure I understand why is the legal thing in here for the specified criminal act? Why is that in there? I'm just curious.
I'm sure that's there under the guidance of the attorney at the time that helped draft all of that. Yeah, regulation around, it's similar to marijuana businesses, regulation around adult oriented businesses. Is very specific and yeah, and sometimes.
Very curious.
Yeah, no, sometimes they're hard to read, you know, in terms of, oh my God, you had to spell that out, really? And it's like, yeah.
Even the nuns didn't talk about this stuff.
There you go.
Exactly.
It's the only place I find.
So,
But I'm just not sure why it has to be in a code thing that like planning would use. I'm not sure I get it. It's a legal thing.
I once had very early in my career, I once had a conversation with somebody when I worked for Mesa County who was inquiring about a body shampooing business that they wanted to start.
Yeah, for instance of some.
Okay.
So sometimes,
This one
Yeah.
of the locally
like I said, this falls under that category of
historical
just, it's
sites.
just don't touch, just rely on the vetting that the previous. I can't make this stuff up, Frank. I never would have thought of that one on my own. So,
Question gets asked more than.
the best part was he was actually rather embarrassed to talk to me about it and ask for a different planner and no one else was available.
Awesome.
So if you're that embarrassed, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I just,
Yeah,
I don't know, if Nina would say that, because I mean, that's a legal thing, and I don't,
know why this would be in planning.
in planning, I don't get it.
Can we move on to stable? commercial?
Yeah, because none of those seem like they'd be in any kind of use code we have.
No. I mean, it's a definition of the a criminal act, so I don't,
I think that comes out of state law. Actually, it even references
it
state law.
references sex
So-
offender definitions.
Yeah,
It's
no, just
referencing legal.
the chair's trying to,
Public reach.
so
Just-
leave them alone. I agree with the chair. We're going to what, stable?
Well,
Stable- stable
but in response to Frank's comment, it was to make sure that no one found a loophole to put a brothel in your neighborhood as opposed to a short-term rental. So-
You still don't need a liquor license.
Oh, geez.
So no comments on stable. I think it's standard height.
Well, that's dealing with signs. And we should at least say this is a
Under the signs.
sign standard height.
Huh?
We,
Commercial? Oh, you were, I was.
All the sign stuff would get
did,
grouped together.
Oh, that one.
And somebody could read that and it says, it doesn't have anything to do with my new house.
Oh, okay.
But I
Mhm.
know what is the standard height,
Yeah,
so we need to clarify that.
I get it.
Any comments on storm drainage facilities? Or any other storm? 5 years, 10 years, storm runoff? Any comment there? Story. Any comments on that?
Let me just make a comment on the word story. We talked about building heights significantly before, when we talked about instead of using actually the number of feet, but the number of stories. So we may have to come back and revisit this later.
Is it because of like an 8-foot versus a 10-foot ceiling? I mean, basically.
Yeah. I may be wrong, but Ken can correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the a story probably taller than they used to be? I mean, you used to be able to do an 8 or 10 foot. Well, an 8 foot would be probably to the ceiling to the floor. But then there's other things for,
It's a type of building construction,
yeah,
what your typical story would be.
but don't you think over time they
But-
probably grew?
There's consumer demand for higher ceiling
Yeah,
heights.
there's.
Yeah.
Even though
you-
most apartments still don't put vaulted ceilings on lower floors, they just do it in the upper floor where the pitch of the roof warrants it. But
That makes sense.
there would be some potential for townhomes and other things to have taller stories, just to. It's the cost of construction, right?
Okay.
And-
Smaller footprint, go taller.
At the Board of Adjustment, they have actually seen one multifamily dwelling request for a height variance. And part of the issue that they were running into was that market demand where people want, a 9 or a 10-foot ceiling. And, that really pushes things up when you're also still trying to maximize that density. And when you've got, 3 10-foot floors, you're at 30 feet really, really fast, and that's the maximum height in the zone district. So no, there is consumer demand for taller ceiling heights in residential dwellings.
I would like to, I'm sorry, I'm fine with the story kind of the way it is. I don't think it's a functional space between floors, basically. But the storm, 10-year and 5-year storm, do we not reference 100-year storm in our codes for certain conditions? That seems like that's a typical, I'm just wondering why we just use 5 and 10, because I don't know when I've had to deal with a 5 and 10-year storm in any planning on a civil document. Civil drawings, usually 100-year is one of the markers that we design to.
Depends on what you're designing for.
Sure.
Floodplains, they typically look at 100 and 500-year storm events. But when you're talking drainage systems, these are actually kind of small numbers. Other places I've worked, we were dealing with trying to design for a 10-year rain event, which really isn't, out on the Eastern Plains, it's definitely not sufficient for the gully washers you would get, where you get 2 inches of rain in 20 minutes. When there was, when we cited the Loves and Brush, we had that chat that yes, the city standard says a 10-year event, but you might want to think about doing more, because it's really going to boil down to how long people cannot get across the parking lot and into your building. So they opted to design for a 25-year event. So
Anyway, I'm
that's what these
just
relate to.
wondering, I mean, to me, it's obvious what a 10-year storm is and what a 5-year storm is, and the definition is very obvious. It still doesn't tell me as the designer where I got to go to get that data as provided by Bureau of Standards or such and such or something. That would be what I'd be looking for if I was trying to build something here. Okay, what do I got to meet, to do the project? So I'm just saying that that's just an obvious statement of what that is. Doesn't provide any place for them to go get that specific piece of data for the area.
And I'm not sure if that's specified in our engineering standards or not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just a comment that I usually encounter the 100-year mark and some other things in
And keep in
design
mind,
criteria.
excuse me.
But when somebody's designing conveyance pipes for stormwater, I'm sure they would push back vehemently against designing. for
No,
every
it's just
storm.
that there's a pipe size that carries so much water, but you gotta have the floodplain and where the surface water goes when those are full and all those things are based on other year numbers. A lot of the time, so. Anyway,
Keep in mind too, that we purposely decided not to include the floodplain hazard regulations that the city has adopted with this unified code, because it's mandated by federal requirements. for
Yeah.
floodplains, and we didn't want to kind of mix that up, so we gotta be careful.
I just assumed that these are in the code elsewhere. And that's why they're listed here as definitions. And I thought the others were probably in there too, but not listed. If they're not in there, no big deal.
Yeah, I've just made
And
a
I'm
note
fine
to
with it the
double
way it
check.
is. I just. Go ahead.
I've made a note to double check in the code because if it is only in the floodplain or in engineering standards or something and it's not anywhere else in the code, I think we could remove it.
Yeah, I mean. There's not a lot of confusion about this for designers and civil engineers. They know what they're doing.
We're on story. No comments on street. No comments on structural alterations. No on structure. No comments on subdivision. We did have comment.
That was me. Only a comment because with this whole redoing of the codes, the section 17s, are those being touched or does that reference have to change?
Where?
That would need to be changed.
In subdivision, it references with the exception of exemption plat is defined in section 17.08.28. Oh, so if any of section 17 is changing
Yeah.
with this, we have to make sure this is updated too.
Yep, great catch.
Is that dealing with PUDs maybe? Or
No, those both deal with the subdivision regs, and I think those,
Yeah.
that goes to the process for an exemption plat versus those are specific portions of the subdivision chapter as it's currently written.
But the point is, if we adopt this revised code, those
References need
sections
to
go away.
change.
one of those final checks,
Mhm.
citations.
Subdivision major, no comments. Subdivision minor, no comments. Substantial improvement, didn't see any comments. Bringing us to supermarket.
Yeah, why do we need a supermarket and a grocery store definition?
And that goes back to what we'd asked Jen to look at already. Of coming up with a more inclusive or more generic definition based on square footage.
Yeah, my note on it, I'm not sure, we talked about it, maybe when we talked about grocery store before, this is grocery store large.
Oh, that's not what it has, so.
I think that's, we have a grocery store
Good question.
already. And the difference with this one is that it's more than 2 acres, so
No, that, I
to
think
call it
it's,
grocery store large, puts it next to each other following our other standard. And
well,
that's-
grocery store says that you can't sell gasoline. And supermarket says you could. I mean, no, it's still, sorry, no, it says excluding, my bad. So I don't, they say the same thing.
Well, it comes down to what we talked about earlier with retail and large retail.
Yeah, so. I think
Maybe
that's
it
what we
is
were-
beneficial to have grocery stores and supermarkets separated. And use that square footage.
Oh, yeah, so
Sure.
it's less than 2 acres and more than 2 acres.
My notes say that we had grocery stores large and then we were gonna add grocery store small and then get rid
Yeah,
of
so that,
supermarket.
and get rid of supermarket.
That was my notes from
Yeah.
earlier.
My recollection of notes also.
Okay.
Technical schools had a couple comments.
We defined a school.
Mary and Val, I guess you both.
It did.
Well, it comes back to, again, having our schools kind of all located together. Or you can reference it. Just include technical schools under school.
Oh, yeah,
We talked about that, okay.
yeah.
Telephone business office, is a comment?
That sounded to me like it was talking about a answering, not an answering service, call center, exactly.
Is that it's what it struck me as? It's like the old thing in, downtown, there's this big tall building that had had floor after floor of switchboards and connectors or something. Is it that was that sort of thing, which is not really a use that's exists anymore, but
I would agree with you.
I mean, it's added as a new item. We didn't include it, but I'm not sure.
You just search the United States for telephone business office and see if there's one
That,
listed anywhere by that
But you
definition.
know what I'm talking about, the way they used to have these big buildings. then.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not,
we had a small
Oh,
one in
data
downtown.
centers now.
Rush.
Really?
It was unmanned, you know.
I guess we could, does it sound like something else? It's not retail, is it business services?
No, it's not a business. office.
Well, my guess is this may actually be listed in the use matrix, but had no definition, so that's why it was being added in. But I don't know that for sure, that's speculation. So-
I think you're right, Karen.
So
That's
the-
my guess as well. So
the
we
real
probably should
question-
move it from both places.
Yeah, I said the real question is, do we need it at all?
Where is it in the use table?
Under T, I know,
Page 8,
utilities, I don't.
it's under infrastructure. Telephone business office.
Yeah, so
Oh.
that's an antiquated term
Yeah.
that probably needs, like Jen just said, eliminated from both places.
Business I don't know, business services or maybe. We've already got enough coverings.
Because if somebody, T-Mobile, AT&T, whoever wants to set up the storefront to help their wireless customers with, buying a cell phone, service plans, all that, that's a retail use at this.
What's the
point.
store
And
right
it's got
now
an
next to
answering
Walmart? How is that zoned?
The store next to
T&T.
Walmart.
Yeah.
Verizon has a store right next to the.
T-Mobile just opened one by the UPS store.
Yeah, those are retail outlets at this point.
Yeah,
You
that's-
don't
they're not-
have an answering service, I mean.
Yeah, they're not the old switch office, which is what a telephone business
Yeah.
office kind of is.
Yeah, so that's, I just,
It
Unnecessary.
seems like it's unnecessary, we can admit. For both the use table and the definitions.
Strike,
Yay.
Hey,
Temporary structure, no comments, temporary use, I believe we had some comments there.
Yeah, again, this was because it has a chapter 18
Yeah.
reference, it's another one of those.
Jen just highlighted it.
Is there a time frame for temporary?
I believe it's actually in the temporary use section.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
And in fact, I'm sure it is, and it's less than 180 days in a calendar year. If I remember correctly.
long time ago, when I worked for the city, we looked at temporary uses. As any time frame that encompassed Pikes Peak, washing all the way down to the ocean. That was temporary. We were just fooling around. It's difficult to make standards for a temporary definition.
Planner humor.
through streets, no comments.
I had,
Or did you?
no, I'm sorry, towers.
Towers and antennas.
Towers, yeah, towers.
Yeah, I guess some of this is. We just did once, people may remember better than I do what. It's only an issue, it's about 50 feet. If my neighbor puts I guess they don't use shortwave antennas that much anymore, but it puts a 49-foot tower or something or other. And is it really? If it's less than 50 feet, nobody cares?
No, this is one of those that currently under our special use standards, there's a little short list of different things. And it specifically lists towers and antennas exceeding 50 feet in height. So this is one of those where we didn't have it defined elsewhere. So let's get a definition for it. When probably what really needs to happen is to look more holistically about proper regulations for citing wireless facilities. Because that's what, whether it's a monopole or a macro facility for telecommunications. Yeah,
Yeah, but it doesn't, I'm not sure that 50 feet is the be all and end all of this.
it's an existing metric under our special use standards.
Cause I would think a cell tower. A 48-foot cell tower stuck around is gonna create the same issues, and then for the city council to.
What it does
We'll get
create
that.
is problems at a stack level for processing. Because the code is currently silent on towers shorter than 50 feet. So
Is a tower, is that, if it's silent, is it a permitted use?
no, there's a whole other provision or section for uses not specified. Which goes through a public hearing to get the use specified to then deal with citing it. So I've spent a lot
So,
of
so the
time.
49-foot tower is already covered, it's covered explicit, it's covered by the other category.
It's
and
covered by
50 it's
omission.
50 feet, then it's the same treatment, but it's 50 feet or more.
Slightly less treatment, but much clearer path.
Sounds like this may be an area where cleaning things up would require addressing it.
Pretty much, yes.
One exceeding, one less than.
Yes,
Well,
it would.
The special use section probably should include towers.
Actually, we don't, the code does not address cellular facilities. That's the whole.
Yeah, of course.
Which
not all-
most
not
places
all
don't,
towers are
20
for cell facilities, a microwave receive transmitter.
But most other entities dealt with that 20 years ago. And that's just not been dealt with up here.
We just failed to do so. That's part of what we're supposed to be doing here, sorting these out.
So. It's a whole that needs to go on our list of stuff that does need to be dealt with in more depth. But anyhow, that's why it's 50 feet, is that's an existing metric under the special use standards.
I guess maybe, as you process that, Karen, you should think. Well, if somebody came into my office and said, I want to put a 45-foot tower, how would you classify that as accessory? How would you really classify that use? I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just thinking that as you think about that,
Yeah,
We do have an ordinance that addresses some of this, and maybe we could just update it. I sent it to all council member and planning this ordinance 1308 series 2017.
which one, what's the rest of the title on that, Frank?
New Year has, so I will open the PDF. to compare with
Yep.
My stupid phone does.
And turn the page and go to townhouses, or townhomes, and this townhouse is right behind it.
My comment is, was already addressed from standpoint of, we took in the condo part, we took the added stuff that included townhouses. We already deleted that over there. So we need this one. Make sense? Okay, when we were on condo, there was a whole definition of condo, and then in red, there was an added that started with townhouses shall also be defined as condominiums for the purposes of. That part that got struck when we were on C. Okay, so it's not considered it's not even with the condo, so you need to leave it. My question was, why do we have it in two places, but we don't anymore, because we already struck it. Make sense? Yeah.
One townhouse,
back under townhome, I would just say that we included the word unit in the first sentence where it says townhomes means a one family dwelling unit,
Oh,
just for clarification.
and I get confused between townhouse and townhome. It's
I'm not sure.
subtle variation.
Yeah, it
Is there a need for two different definitions?
Well, yeah, with the difference being that on the town home, you don't own the land, and the definition here on the townhouse, you do. That's the way
My
everything.
understanding of townhome does include the land.
I think it depends upon how it's platted.
Yeah, that's
includes the land, the townhouse does not.
That's not the way it's written in here right now.
We never said they were good definitions.
No, I'm just saying, this
It's
the,
perfectly clear.
it says townhouses. That is the building, the dwelling, building, whatever, owns both the unit and the townhouse lot on which the unit is built, and the other one does not, and townhome doesn't. If they're backwards, we need to do that. I don't know. They are that.
I think there's two definitions, Valerie, because the townhome is actually defined under the zoning code. And that refers to a type of dwelling unit, again, you know, like it's a single family, multifamily, or
Right,
under townhouse is defined under subdivision regulations. And just like Karen just said, it talks about the plating requirements.
well, actually, the definition is defined here. The only difference between these is one owns the property and one doesn't.
Okay, so based on what you guys are both saying, one probably does come out of the zoning side of things. The other one probably comes out of the subdivision side of things.
Okay,
And so we can potentially merge them into a townhome or townhouse. Or townhome/townhouse. Because the plat and what gets platted and who owns what is not dependent upon whether or not it's a townhome or a townhouse. I see
Right.
these as, when I think of a townhouse, I think of basically sideways attached structures for dwelling that are owned individually or
Okay.
can be bought and
Right.
sold individually.
but it,
And they may or may not include the piece of ground under it,
correct. Yeah,
may or may not. It depends on how the plat's put together.
okay, and then how does it? There's just so many, the townhouse. Building, I don't know, I understand the building one. But it says the same thing about it, may or may not be on the dwelling.
Yeah, they really are one and the same. So I agree. I think they should be merged together. And then we can look through the rest of the documents to make sure that the terminology is consistent.
Well, and then there's also townhouse lot and townhouse tract.
Right,
So
that's
this is probably one of those that needs to be
kind of squished.
sorted out a little more clearly and probably smushed and eliminated and refined.
Just a quick search online, the townhouse and townhome are referenced as one and the same in almost everybody else's definitions. And they just compare it against a condo.
Yep.
Which is a different structure.
Well, looking at all the definitions we have under subdivisions for townhouse, building, lot, tract. I'd recommend that we call it a house and merge the townhome and the zoning fit.
And our regulations do actually differentiate between townhome plats and condominium plats. So there is
Yeah.
that nuance that's spelled out elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna look at lots and tracts. We have a definition of a tract. Any comments on that? Didn't see any. Traffic report, no comments. Trailer and truck rental.
Yeah, my comment that I put repair really did mean rental, and my only comment was that this specifically said it's for short-term trips. But you can go to one of those rental places, it can be a long trip. That it's not, you rented it, you're paying for all the days you're using it, doesn't. I'm not sure we need to differentiate that.
Also, interestingly, this is trailer and truck rental. Service station is truck and trailer rental.
Yeah, there we go. I know.
Sorry.
I know.
It's
I'm
complicated.
sure there's an important distinction there.
Put the word auto in front of that.
Yeah, exactly. I left that out.
Let's not go there again.
It's just a.
Trailer is first alphabetically, so.
I don't know why.
To be just
Yeah,
preferred.
Defined by the trip.
I actually agree with Val. I think we could stop this sentence at moving belongings or materials between locations, period.
Or of limited duration.
You could rent it for a year if you wanted to. Be crazy.
Didn't see any comments on trails, transit facilities, transportation dispatch stations, transportation services, uncovered, or unified business development.
Well, back under uncovered,
Yes.
is that one of those adult things again?
No.
Good one.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist.
Okay, University College. There's a comment there, Lee?
Yeah, again, my comment on schools.
Yeah.
Put them all together.
I said uncovered. Could not obey.
Variance or velocity, no comments.
And actually, hang on a sec. Jen, go back to the unified business development. Excuse me, unified business development.
This one.
And make a note, we need to scan where this appears in the code. Because it's a funky term.
It may be under PUD.
I think it's supposed to be associated with the PUD, but then we also make something else that's not defined, I don't think, was planned business development is the other phrase that shows up under PUD. Those three probably do need to be looked at in combo with each other. Thank you.
Turn the page to page 40. And two left in definitions. Veterinary facility, any comments?
The only comment I had was that it does, sometimes it's just like a checkup, it's not a real treatment thing, and they could do boarding. I mean, some vets do.
I think it says it may or not include a commercial.
Oh, may or may, okay. Yep. Oh, grooming was the other thing. Some of the vets do grooming.
Mhm.
I don't know if we need to be that specific.
There is a pet grooming already,
There is,
pet shop / grooming.
but a vet could do it.
I
Doesn't make them a
think-
pet shop.
From the distinction there I would make is if sometimes you see somebody who wants to do just a grooming, a dog or an animal wash and grooming business versus a veterinary service facility that provides a spectrum of services, one of which may or may not include grooming, may or may not include commercial kennel.
Right.
So
Well,
I
I
don't,
mean, or do we, I mean, I don't know that it needs to be that specific, but
they also
you're gonna say
clean,
may or may not include a commercial kennel. Should you do and grooming?
they also clean teeth.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just, well, I don't know,
I think it's okay.
okay.
Okay. Wall signs, no comment. Wall mounted wireless facility. A couple comments there.
I don't know, I just don't remember one.
The only comment I had on that was in the second line, it says, you know, supported entirely on the wall of a legally existing building. Why can't it just be supported entirely on the wall of a building? Why are we injecting legally existing?
Yeah, I think I did the having maybe the commas with different kind of things. I don't know. I don't know why it has to just be on the wall.
Right.
Well, if it's a
I have a
illegal
rotary
building,
phone.
we don't want to support further development of that building.
Ordinance that Catherine just, and I also emailed to you. It addresses positioning for these different cells, and I don't know if it specifically has wireless listed, but it does talk about microcells and towers and where they're attached to buildings and how high they can be.
The one, the title of the ordinance you were talking about that Catherine showed me relates to just citing small, I think it said small cell, but within the right of ways.
Right.
Is where it went to, which is why it doesn't show up in zoning, it shows up in the street side of things.
Okay.
So it's kind of the modern day version of power poles. You know, nobody thinks anything about citing power pole. Well, here we want them underground, but
This does actually tell you where they can go, and where, how high they can be from the top of the buildings and all that, so I don't know how much of importance that has to do with what everything else we're having read. So,
well, this one is just the funny notation of legally existing as opposed to
Yep.
a building that was put in without permits,
Oh.
so.
Okay.
Well, it's already wrong.
So is that where they put that booster thing behind that?
Could they build a wall-mounted wireless facility on a building while they're building the building?
Mhm.
That it's not existing?
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I don't understand the whole, legally existing building. It's on the wall of the building.
Jen's highlighted it there, so I think we'll
Check it out.
take another look at that in terms of why. Where does that come from?
Water intensive industrial uses.
I have a major editing shortening of it in my notes. Do I have something already on the sheet up there? My problem with it goes into, doing this for preparing materials or finishing products or processing, fabrication, assembly, treatment, packaging. All of which is getting away from the point of it. My edit was water intensive use, industrial uses means a use that requires water in the manufacturing or
Yes.
industrial operations for processing, cooling, washing, or heating.
Yeah,
I'll second that motion.
yeah, me too,
Should I
that
try
I
it
was
again slowly?
disturbed that it didn't say water in the very beginning.
Jen, what I was having is water intensive industrial uses means a use that. Then delete the next several lines down till you get the word require water and say
Yeah.
requires water. In delete the manufacturing or industrial operations for processing, cooling, washing, or heating.
Whatever you just said, it sounded good.
I agree.
I wasn't passing up.
It's kind of like it, sir.
This is one of those where it's listed in the use table as a water intensive industrial use, but you don't have a definition for what does that mean?
And
Just so you know that that's where this is coming from.
Industrial use, we don't want people that, where there's a factory that's doing the water and processing or something too, is the problem.
We don't really want to do.
They're all very desirable, just not here.
Okay. Wholesale trade and distribution establishment comments.
I was gonna say move back up before water intensive uses, and I would say insert the word warehouse. We had that before, we don't have it now. And then we got into some discussion about distribution centers and so on and so forth. And we lost warehouse somewhere along the way. We need that.
Didn't we pick up warehouse in 2 or 3 different ways
Somewhere.
earlier?
That, it was somewhere. I have no idea where.
We had different storage uses.
Oh, maybe.
Are you saying you want just a definition for warehouse?
Yes,
Okay,
Before you do it, can you
didn't-
search?
Didn't we have stuff on storage? Is
I
there several
thought
different-
we did something like that.
We talked about it, I think it was in association with distribution facilities. where, Somehow.
We
that
had
was-
warehouse and distribution, and we made it warehouse and storage. Distribution, I think, was pulled out to be separate. Or was going to be.
But did we have it under, what do we have it on? Not under
Where
W?
is it? I don't.
It was way up front.
Yeah,
We covered it a while ago.
Distribution, maybe.
I haven't, there's nothing in distribution.
it was under commercial warehousing and storage. Change back,
Commercial.
yeah, we said to change it back to warehousing and storage.
Oh, yeah.
okay, never mind. Sorry.
warehousing and storage is probably a better definition, isn't it?
I would think
Yeah.
so.
I would,
Yeah.
so then, yeah, ditch the word commercial.
Okay.
I think most of them are related in some kind of commercial activity.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably go.
Yeah, I had scribbled that we do changed it to warehousing and distribution totally, but.
So, wholesale trade and distribution establishment. Wind generation, private.
Say that, I can't hear you, Catherine.
The says wind generation private, and then you've got private wind generation, so it should be
Oh,
wind
the
generation
syntax.
private, kind of like the other one. It's just the grammar.
the other formatting.
Yeah,
Windows sign.
Back to the sign consolidation.
Yeah, there was a couple up above that,
Working days, have a comment.
My comment was that. The only place working days that use this way is in the land disturbing activities, not notice days. So we should be sure that. This notice days are also called working days.
Check notice.
This particular one is for the land disturbing.
Working days. Generally in drafting and such, they say that is a term that's only used when it's a short period of time. Usually if you count days, and I'm not sure that it matters here. It's funny if we just use it in that context you're talking about.
It's used in the context of land disturbance, so moving the stuff, that's where this particular one came from. But we use working days when we're with, you have to do your serve your
Posting.
notice by X number of working days before, so.
Like, yeah, but I say usually working days is a term that's only used within for limited periods of time. Other than that, you talk about days.
no, and a lot of times when, and it may be all over the place currently within our code. So that's one of the things that we do want to clean up. But when we're talking notices, we tend to think in terms of just number of days, calendar days.
I'm just
But
saying. we
for
need to make
Calendar
sure
days
it's-
is what you want to use almost all the time, and you may say, but if it ends on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, you go to the next day.
And that's what the new draft does talk to is 21, particularly like sign posting requirements as an example. When planning department has to post a sign on a piece of property that's about to be adjudicated, it says posted for 21 days immediately prior to the public hearing. And then there's a note in there that they've added when a time limit for posting signs falls on Saturday, Sunday, state or city holidays. Signs shall be posted on the nearest following non-holiday weekday. So there are other references within the code that talk about dates certain.
I say you only want to use working days. If you're only going to give somebody 3 days, it may make a difference if it's
Well,
Friday.
okay, but I think
Sure.
where I was with this thing was really, it legitimately belongs in the land disturbing activity thing, so my thing was, let's make it sure it's very clear this working days is comma, land disturbing, for land disturbing activity in the bold, so it's
That
obvious.
use in land disturbance, wasn't it like 30 days? It was a long period of time. So maybe something we look at when we get.
It has to, I mean, it's, yeah, they got the Saturday and the Sunday and what the weather is and the soil, I mean, but that's where this particular one came from.
It's just a suggestion we can see as we go through, but I'm sort of suggesting working days is a concept that as describing the duration, you may want to get rid of.
Well,
Because it just
specifically
becomes-
the weather exemption in this is specific to land.
That's
Disturbing.
my point is
This is a working days with this exception for weather.
Yeah,
which
this
is
is
different
working
than
days
typical working
specifically
days.
for land disturbing activities.
All right, well,
Calendar.
that's a very different concept.
Exactly.
Right,
It's not a
that-
particular number of days.
No,
right, that's why I said we need to be
All right,
sure that it's very
because
obvious.
you may
that
have
that's what's
Saturday, Sunday off, and then you have
okay.
Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday's
Yeah.
not a working day because of rain, and
All-
Thursday's not
okay,
a
all
working day
which is
because of
like-
wind.
Concept of working days should only be in when there's a special situation like that, or it's a very short period of
mean,
time. All of.
In business, you have a working days count. It's,
all-
different,
All of
2,000
Karen's
days per
notice-
year or whatever.
notice-
I think it's
Or I mean,
fine.
2,000 hours per year.
Karen's
I know,
notice-
Definition's wrong, Karen. I just think that
And it says
Yeah,
land
we-
disturbing activities.
but if
So
you
I
were
think it's
just-
fine.
If you were just going through that and glancing at it. There's people that wouldn't read it that careful and wouldn't notice the land disturbing activity. That's all I was saying was,
That's
if
why
the
we're
bold heading, it should be,
diligent.
if it's in the bold, it's crystal clear.
I think people will get to this definition more from the context in the ordinance elsewhere where they're reading about land disturbing activity. And it references within a specific number of working days. And then you go, well, it's a working day. I think that's how you get to it. And it does say specifically land disturbed.
I know, and it's
Conditions-
little and it's tiny and it's down here as opposed to
It's-
bold. That's all I'm suggesting. It's
I think it's,
honest.
I think we can move forward, leaving it as is.
It does mention land disturbing in there. I'm fine with that too. Yep.
Keep in mind too, that we also have discussed and we've talked about the definition for the word days.
Yeah.
Back under page 10 of our definitions, we do define days.
It would take us to yard.
My gosh.
by the way, this is
close.
the end. This is our last half a page of definitions or not
Page
even,
41.
Now we're gonna move to title two now.
not tonight. We're not prepared.
Thank you, Karen. So I did not have any comments on the last page. I did have a note, something about zoning map. Any recollection of what that may refer to?
The fact that there is no definition.
Like, there isn't one.
So definition. Don't need it. Again. Okay. Any other comments, definitions as whole, Catherine?
I just went back and looked at the days and it's got working days and then it references 18.06.
Yeah.
So you probably want to take that out also. Otherwise, nothing else can.
Thank you.
I'll make a not comment for Lou, who left the meeting. He said the only other question he had in the S's, do we need a definition for single family dwelling?
It's
We-
under
Do we
D.
really mean?
Under
a-
D.
No, that we've got under D, we've got dwelling unit, single family, dwelling
Gotcha.
unit, multifamily.
Perfect.
So, yep. We've already been down that road.
Yep. Perfect.
Any other comments regarding definitions?
Well, just what happens now? Are you gonna give us a new version?
Jen and I were talking about that and I don't have a clear path. But we will not lose sight of it because, and part of where we are is I've got a little bit of a lull in current planning applications. So that gives us opportunity for more work sessions. So that's what.
Oh, yay.
See, everybody's excited. So yeah, your meetings, May 11th and May 25th, we're looking at doing both work sessions those nights. And Jen and I are actually meeting Monday afternoon again, in terms of like, what are we giving you for the next assignment? And the first meeting in May may very well be more a conversation around format and structure, because we do need to get back to chapter 2, because we talked about a couple of different options in terms of how should that be formatted. And so I said that conversation may be more just structural, you know, in terms of how the content then gets plugged in, as opposed to some of the specifics. And that the hope there is to maybe speed things along, because like in chapter 2, part of the reason we abandoned where we were on that was there were so many comments that were going to carry through, you know, single family, urban, single family, suburban, multifamily, urban, suburban, that rather than spend a lot of time talking about the same comment, you know, that we had some guidance. So, but basically we need to know what format we want to put some stuff in. So that's where we are, is trying to figure out how to use what you've given us and expediently or be as respectful as everyone's time as possible in terms of what we do next. So I don't have a clear path tonight, but that's where we are and that's what we're looking at. Your first meeting in June will have a current planning case. And then, of course, the second meeting in June is reserved for this task. So that's your upcoming schedule. So
I think we're completed our work session. Karen, do you have any comments on? Kind of summarize right there.
Yeah, and then I guess other things, with regard to short-term rentals, at the last city council meeting, Jerry Penland addressed city council under items not on the agenda and talked about their plan going forward to circulate a petition on a citizens initiative to get a special election to settle the question of where I believe where short-term rentals should be cited. I don't know what the question looks like or how what that is, but that's, he expressed his intent at that meeting on that.
Are they gonna try to roll that into the general election in November or
That's a
in
question.
April?
That's a question for Suzanne. I think the timing and how all that plays out, it may be a special election for us here in Woodland Park.
90 days after they do the petition.
See, I don't hold that.
They do the petition starting on first of May. They have 90 days to complete it, and then it would go to special election, so that would be far before the next election.
So it would, there is no general election in November. I
Yeah.
forgot.
So, and that's where I don't keep those details. I just know to see Suzanne. So there's that, and then the other thing, I guess, is that Senate Bill 213 that I had sent you just an email about a while back, just letting you know that that was working its way through the state legislature, and that I understand that's been amended, and I don't know if it's come out of its second reading yet or not, but CML has been doing a pretty good job of updating their website and keeping that up to date in terms of the status of that.
Like email blast about it. So I keep one email on my.
CML, they very well could have, yeah, if you're signed up for their some of their different options. I can't even remember what they call them. But so anyhow, that's still in play out there. So.
Yeah, we're so glad that CML is looking at that, because the ramifications of the state assuming land use. I mean, I know they do for some special uses. This was, I've heard the word overreach. And this may have been a state overreach.
I think there's the potential for a lot of unintended consequences.
Yep.
Because we've had a couple of inquiries, developers scouting up here for where else can we cite multifamily housing.
And I think it's a frustration of the legislature and the governor that why isn't local government moving more quickly to try to solve this issue? And they're saying, well, if local government doesn't think it's a significant issue for our citizens, then we're going to call it a state critical issue. So I'm glad what's happened, because I definitely believe that when we make land use decisions, whether it's the code or reviewing projects, we're dealing with people out here in the audience that have concerns and comments, and those things would not be addressed in what was proposed in 213. So we're moving on the right track.
Yeah. And then the other item that was in our city budget for this year was to do a housing needs assessment. So I believe it was at the last meeting where council authorized the contract with or one of the last two meetings, contract with a consultant who's going to do all that data collection and analysis around, what is the state of housing and where are gaps and those kind of things. And there is a component in there to look at the impact of STRs, on our housing stock. So that's about a 6-month timeline to work through all that. So I think we're looking at November for an end product on that. So, but it is really more data oriented, as opposed to establishing policy going forward. This is kind of that baseline of information that was helpful to know what you want to do to potentially establish policy. So those are the juicy tidbits.
Thank you, Karen. Any comments, Larry?
Yeah, I do. And I'm going to be looking at Frank and Catherine here. And what Karen to listen, but I didn't see something that there was a new class of our Citizens Academy just graduated. Now's the opportunity again to find out how many of those people that just graduated from the academy are interested in serving on the planning commission.
Yeah, and actually, because we have an opening, only 3 people applied. None of them were in that class. So I don't think any of them, maybe in April.
Yeah, Board of Adjustment
We've got a
needs
few
to,
empty seats here too.
yeah, Board of Adjustment needs 2 alternates. Planning Commission has 3 open seats. Board of Review, I believe, has space for 2 alternates. So-
Yeah, they need more technical.
The other ones.
When
The
people
reason-
volunteer, I say yes. That's the way it should be.
Well, I think we ought to ask the people that graduated if they are interested. I mean, if they're all fired up on.
When I
Finish-
applied for
finish.
planning commission, they asked me if I had interest in the board of review. And somebody was supposed to check and see if you could do both.
I don't.
The Board of Adjustment's the only one you can't do both.
Yeah, you can do Board of
If
Review.
you do board of review, you can't do board of adjustment.
Right.
Yeah, board of adjustment would be a conflict.
Yep.
Personally, I think it's very important that this commission get up to full speed. And the reason I say that is summer's coming. I'm looking at the schedule my wife is putting together for me. People visiting, going places, don't do this, say. I feel bad if I'm going to be absent, and I know I'm going to be absent. For instance, I know that maybe the first part of September, I'll be gone for that meeting. But if there's other things that might be coming up. And just because 1 or 2 of us is absent, we don't have a quorum, we can't conduct business. And I can't stress it enough that we just, because 1 or 2 or 3 of us have to take some time off to do other things, we can't stop city business.
I appreciate you bringing that up. For 17 months since I started, I've been talking about the need for additional members on this board as well as the others. And consistently at a council meeting, we get asked, what's the impact of somebody not being, if you don't have a quorum? So, that comes up consistently. I think trying to find folks to serve here, because let's face it, this board is probably the most intensive out of the ones that we staff in the planning office. The volume of work and the length of time you guys commit is substantial. So that's, I think, sometimes a bit of a hard sell. So hopefully we'll get some interested folks.
Well, I think the need is urgent.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and we did have 1 apply who went through the Citizens Academy, but this was his 3rd time through Citizens Academy. Don did know. After graduating this past week.
I didn't know you could fail.
I don't.
If you go to-
I think it's an overachiever.
He just has so much fun. He keeps coming back, is my understanding. Because it's a,
I know it
Yeah.
does.
yeah. No, yeah, because I hear great feedback from Citizens Academy and that the folks that go through it really seem to enjoy it. Definitely eye-opening. The folks that clean the building here for us, I was here one after hours and I ended up talking to Dan and he expressed an interest and it's like, oh, absolutely. Because it was like right before they were getting ready to start. It's like, turn in your application. And it sounded like he really enjoyed it and has a whole new respect for all of our operations here at the city and what goes into making the city run. So.
And I've also heard the comment that people, and I asked them, would you be interested in the service? And why would I want to go through that process? City council is not going to approve me anyway. So
They didn't approve
there's
me
not.
either, so I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
And I'm planning. That was my first choice. You gotta be elected to try to make a difference. And then sometimes it's still out there, but.
Anything else, commissioners?
Just thanks to our consultant for sticking around. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure.
Very good. It's 9:20, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.